Aloha and welcome to my channel for all you people who are new. Today I like to do on Fridays, I like to do Ancient Oblivion and the Plasma Apocalypse. Today we're going to focus on Ancient Oblivion. Those are the things that collectively our society seems to have forgotten about. Ancient truths from myths and legends, all the way to how did our alphabet begin? Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever wondered how, where do our letters come from? What do they mean? Let me get my chat popped out real quick, and we're going to do a really fun lesson today on the Phoenician alphabet. Good to see everybody in the chat. Let me get this popped out here real quick. Boom. All right, sweet. Good to see everybody. Hopefully you guys can hear me. If you can, if it sounds okay, give me a thumbs up. I would super appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and get right into things. But have you ever wondered where do the letters come from? Like, where do the actual alphabet letters come from? Like A. Have you ever asked yourself, what does A mean? Or what does B mean? Where do those come from? You know, today we just write them out as little glyphs and we have no idea what they mean. We resonate more and understand more what emojis convey, what they mean, than we do our very own letters and our very own alphabet. So today we're going to take a look at that. There's various alphabets across the world. And if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend, sort of as a primer, to check out the last live stream I did in our Ancient Oblivion playlist, and it was about the Tower of Babel, or the Tower of Babylon. And that story helps to explain where our diversity in our languages came from, but inversely, if we trace it all the way back, it helps to explain that we once had a common language, that we once had and spoke or communicated in a way that was common to one another. And then something happened. And after that something happened, our languages split into different pronunciations and accents and dialects as tribes spread out across the earth, and they took with them their various ways of pronunciations and different accents and different dialects, which turned into our different languages the world across. And it's still doing that today. Our languages are still evolving today. So today we're going to focus on let me just make sure you guys can hear me in the chat. I do see some thumbs up. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the thumbs up in the chat. All right, cool. Sounds like everything's good. All right, cool. So let's jump into things, right? Now, today we're going to be focusing on what is known as the Phoenician alphabet. It's 22 glyphs, 22 pictures, just like emojis, actually. Some people would refer to it because it's very closely related to Proto-Sinaitic, or you could say Paleo-Hebrew as well. Let's take a look at what it looks like here. So here's an example. Now remember, a long time ago, they used to read and write from right to left. Today, we read and write from left to right. And I have a theory about that. One of my theories is that the world seems to be predominantly right-handed. Now, if you're right-handed, it actually links up to the left side of your brain. The left side of your brain is more analytical, more robotic in thought. The right side of your brain corresponds to your left hand. So if people once wrote predominantly with their left hand, then it stands to reason that they would write from right to left, and they would read from right to left. Hey, Lady Luke's, welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for your support. So, whenever we regard many of these ancient languages, not all of them, but this one in particular, we're going to go from right to left. This is a helpful exercise to start working on that creative side of the mind that seems to have been blocked out. My theory as to why people changed from predominantly ambidextrous to left-handed to right-handed is I believe it's directly related to the polarity shifts that our world goes through. When we go through energetic shifts, I believe that it affects the minds of the people, that it affects our brain waves and how we see things. And if you look at the evolution of this alphabet, I'm going to show you quite a few different examples here of how the alphabet itself has changed. And we'll talk about what alphabet even means and stuff too. And I'm going to do some drawings too. But if you look at how it's shifted and changed over time, you can see that originally they were picture forms, and that over time they actually turn upside down as people's perspectives started to shift and to turn upside down. And if you take a look at my OMENS series, and you know, you focus on the upcoming apocalypse, which is a totally different matter. But you'll see, as many do, that the world seems to be upside down. So it's no surprise to people like myself that the alphabet itself is upside down. So let's take a look at this, and let's start off with these glyphs right here. So as you can see, I'm actually gonna focus on the first one. Farida just gave me a donation. Thank you. High five, Farida. So we're gonna read from right to left, starting in the upper right-hand corner. This one is a picture of the head of a cow, or you could say an ox. Okay, we're gonna actually start off with this one, but I wanna read them to you first. This is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mim, right there, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe, Tzadi, or Tzadeh, Kof, Resh, Shin, Tav. And they're pronounced in different ways, so don't get too hung up on the correct pronunciation. You're going to run into all kinds of people that will interpret these glyphs in many different ways. They'll pronounce them in many different ways. And that's okay, because that's where we are today, because our languages and our dialects and our perspectives and everything have shifted so dramatically. I'm just going to teach this to you from my experience and from my perspective. So while my pronunciations and interpretations and stuff might vary, or might be slightly different from your own or other people's, hopefully you can take what resonates with this particular presentation. So let's take a look at this first one right here. Going from right to left, this is Aleph. This is the letter A. And let's take a look at this. So if we compare this, we got at the top, it says up here proto-Sinaitic, and it's a picture of a head of an ox, right? So it's an ox head, or a bull's head, you could say, with the horns poking out of there. And then in the Phoenician, it turns more into like a glyph form. So originally, all of our letters, A, B, C, D, every single one of them was essentially an emoji. Every single one of them was a picture of something in the real world that conveyed something. The more pictures you would put next to other pictures, the more context you would have for what is being said about those pictures. Now, whenever we create words, we have roots, and we have prefixes and we have suffixes, and our words got bigger and bigger and bigger over time. But originally, words were just one letter. They were just one picture. And then if you wanted to add to that, to sort of give more context to exactly what picture you were talking about, you would add another picture to that and then put, you know, a period or a separator or whatever. So let's take a look at this one. Aleph started off as the bull's head, and then I'm going to show you how it evolved into the Phoenician, the archaic Greek form, the archaic Latin form, and then of course our Roman form that we have today, right? Now this looks like a sort of like a triangle with a, you know, maybe like a pyramid with a little top right there, or a capstone. And this is what we get today, the letter A. So what does that mean? So let's check out some more comparisons real quick. Oh, Farida, thank you so much for your donation. You guys are very kind. High five. All right, so if you take a look up here, you can see, sorry, it's kind of blurry, but we've got the ox head. That is Aleph. That's A, basically. We're going to get into these other ones too, and we'll go faster as we go. I just want to start off a little slow so we can build a bridge. Here's another example. Keep in mind, people drew things in different ways. People, just like today, people would draw a picture of a cow in totally different ways, but the common things survived over time. For example, these horns that come up off of the bull. It's really a bull, actually. And then here's another example over here. This is the modern Hebrew script. Now let's take a close look at this Hebrew script right here. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit more on that one. Okay, so this one right here is sort of a calligraphy picture of the cow's head, or of the bull's head. As you can see, this would be like a side, like a profile of the bull. This is its head, its face right there. This is the first horn, and that is the second horn, right? Okay, so that's one example. Let's go back to where I had it here, and I'll show you another one. Here's the Greek. In Greek, instead of Aleph, it is Alpha, which is just a different dialect. It's just a different accent that turned into an entirely different language because they spoke differently. And this is also another reason why vowels, or vowel points more specifically, were added to the alphabet, right? Originally, there were no vowels. Vowels I mean, there are vowel sounds originally, okay? So there are oohs and ahs and things like that. But the actual vowels that were introduced into modern alphabets, they were a tool to force that particular region to speak and to say the word the way that the officially accepted way was. They didn't want to lose their language. They didn't want their language to mix in with the other accents and the other dialects. And it's kind of like modern Ebonics, and how, like, you know, there's Ebonics and there's slang and stuff like that. And I kind of reference that all the time on my channel, how even right now, although we have vowels and whatnot, our language is quickly evolving as people are they're accepting of new pronunciations of things. And other people they forget the old pronunciations. And so they start spelling it according to the new pronunciation. And that's how we get entirely different languages. And that's how it becomes more confusing, which relates back to the Tower of Babel. All right. So now let's check out this picture right here. We're going to start off with the A, and then we're going to jump into these other letters, and we'll go a little bit faster now that we have some context for our presentation. All right. So I'm going to get out my little drawing here. And we're going to do A. So what are we familiar with? We're familiar with, let me add a new layer here. Boom. Okay, cool. All right, so we're familiar with this right here, A, right? So it's a point. It's like an upside down triangle with a little line through the middle. So this was an ox head. So originally, people would actually draw out, let me get rid of that one. Originally, people would draw out the entire picture of an ox. They would, or a bull, you could say. They would draw the head. They would draw the horns. They would probably put a body there. You'll have to forgive my crude drawings. They would put some legs on there. You know what I mean? Because originally, this is how people would draw. They would draw the entire picture. Well, as you can imagine, once people started writing more and more and more, and that became more acceptable and more common, after telepathy had disappeared in our world, then people it turned into what we call shorthand, right? People wanted quicker ways to draw this. So the quicker way to draw this, let's see, let me just delete all this real quick. I know, Control Z. There we go. All right, so the quicker way to draw this would be just to draw the actual head of the animal, right? So an animal with horns, that's what that turned into over time, right? So remember, we're dealing with the letter A, which is the point, the upside down triangle with the line through the middle, right? So at first they drew it like this, and they were trying to draw it true to form, I believe. But remember, originally, especially as with hieroglyphics and rock drawings and stuff, these things were being carved into tough surfaces so that they could last the test of time. People originally didn't have ink and paper and an eraser and pencil and, you know, things like that. So oftentimes this right here would become more like it would have points. You know, because you have to imagine, if you've ever tried to carve your name into like a tree or into a rock, which, you know, I'm not a fan of people carving into trees or rocks or whatever, but it would basically be more straight lines and more hard angles than this right here, right? All right, cool. So let's take this back a notch, and I'll show you how this turned into more of a short form. So originally it was like that, but then people did it quicker and it went like this, and they would just do that. And then people would just go like this. They would make the face, and then they would just, boom, go just like that. Now this glyph right here is still the ox head. This is still the head of the bull. This one right here, right? Bam, that one. And then over time, you'll see this in the actual alphabets when you compare them over time. That this glyph right here actually changed into like different, it shifted, it started to turn upside down. So sometimes it would be like that, and sometimes it would be like this. And, you know, sometimes they would be upside down, sometimes it would be inverted and things, but this is where the origin of the letter A comes from. We'll go a little faster with the other letters, like I said, but just to give you an idea, this was the original emoji, was this right here, the picture of the ox head or the bull's head. I'm just making a smiley just so you could see what it is, right? Okay, cool. Now, let's move on to some other ones here. So that's the Aleph. So the bull's head with the horns, we have to ask ourselves, what did the letter A mean? What does Aleph mean? What does alpha mean? Well, we know like alpha male, that's a common expression in the modern vernacular. It means somebody who is strong, somebody who is first or foremost, right? Just like A is the first of the letters. So the bull's head represents strength and at the same time being a leader or being first or in front of, right? Oftentimes it implies leadership or strength because the bull is very strong and it's full of muscles, right? So that's what the letter A actually means. A means strength. This is synonymous with the bull, basically, right? So that's what the letter A literally means. And that's where we get that. So if you wanted to write down that something was very strong or something was powerful, you would write the letter A, or you would draw the picture of the ox head, right? All right, cool. I think we get the gist of that one. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next glyph here. Now remember, there's different ways of drawing these particular things. Like for example, this one's more of a profile. You see that Aleph right there, or that letter A, or that bull head? That's sort of a profile. It's sort of like the bull looking sideways almost. This one right here is B, bait. This is the letter for a house. So let's check out the comparison here. Over here, you can see it looks kind of like a container. And this is closer to the actual Egyptian hieroglyph for the letter B, which is a house. And you can see there's an entryway. And it's sort of like a schematic, how we do schematics for housing today, and you would draw it from above looking down. That's kind of how it originally started off. Blake just gave me a donation, 1991. What's up, dude? Thank you. High fives. Good vibes to you. High fives and good vibes. All right. So here's another one. As you can see, it looks almost like it's sort of a spiral, but it's not. This is the entrance, and this is the inner chamber. So this would be a house. And then over here, Beit. That's how you spell that. Beit. Sometimes it's Beth, or it's written out Beth. So if you're somebody who's into the Bible and you read, for example, somebody's name, Bethany, or just if your name is Beth, right? It actually means house. Or you could, it could imply other things like container and stuff. So Beit or Bet turned into Beta, right? A lot of these Greek ones have like a childlike way of saying the letters. So for example, if we say dad, in the modern vernacular of modern languages, we say, hey, dad, or hey, mom. A child would emphasize that last letter, so it would turn into hey, dada, or hey, mama. It sounds kind of Italian to me personally. But that's why there is actually an A at the end of this. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta. It's sort of a childlike way of pronouncing these letters, which turned into an entirely different alphabet, as we can see here. So let's focus on B. And I'm going to draw this one out for you too. So it started off, people were trying to draw a picture of a house. Now, some people drew it from above. And as you can see, they drew like a little entryway here, and then they drew the actual big room, because originally, I imagine, houses didn't have a whole lot of rooms or anything. They were like caves or, stuff like that with one entryway and a main room or whatever, right? But some people drew it like this. And then it would go around, and then you would have your little room right there. So this would be the entryway, and this would be your inner chamber. Okay, and you can see if you turn this sideways, you can kind of see how it would be like sort of a B shape almost, right? Oh, it looks kind of like a G, so let's just take that one off there. All right, undo that one. All right, so anyways, that's Beit. Now, keep in mind also that people lived in tents. So the letter B by some people was drawn as, like, for example, the horizon, and then they would make a tent on the horizon. And it takes no stretch of the imagination to see that if you just turn this one sideways, it turns into a lowercase letter B, as you can see right here. Much like the Greek version, I believe. The Greek's more like squiggly. But anyways, it's a lowercase letter B, and it means house or container, right? So let's check this out. Let me make another layer here. Okay, cool. So we'll hide that one. Oops. All right. Just keep that one. So we learned Aleph and we learned Beit. So let's go ahead and let's learn our first word in Phoenician or Hebrew or you know, there's other languages too. But if we put these together and we put them, I'm going to draw them in the old way, in the old emoji. We draw the head of a bull, which is, now I'm going to draw this left to right just because, you know, so people can understand it easier. But originally it would have been from right to left. A, and then the house, which is like a container. And you can draw it in different ways, right? And B, which gives us the word Ab. Or you could say Abba, which means the leader of the house, or the strength of the house, or the strong one of the house. And what this means in modern Hebrew and in Phoenician is father. It means the leader of the house. Abba or Abba, which is how children say it, right? Abba, Emma, etc., right? Okay, cool. Now, of course, we would actually have to invert this and draw this in the other way. So let's draw it from right to left. From right to left, it would be the picture of the bull's head. If I want to go quickly, I'm just going to draw these points. Boom. A or Aleph, and then B, which would be like the horizon. Boom. Papow, and a tent. There we go. So Abba from right to left. Abba, or the strength of the house. Father, basically, right? Robin. Oh my God. I just got a huge donation from Robin Hames, who says, I love anything related to ancient history. That and your Omen series are my favorite. I always learn so much from you. Thank you. Wow. That's super kind. And that was a lot to donate. So thank you very much, Robin. I really appreciate it. All right, cool. So let's move on to some other ones here. And let's find out what's next. So A, B, so far it's pretty much the exact same as the modern script, right? A, B, but then we have something weird happening. It doesn't have C if we go back up. Let's trace this back up through time. The letter C, you can see it's backwards there. You see the B is backwards, right? So for me, this implies polarity shifts whenever we go through electromagnetic shifts in the world. Now here's where it really changes. You see that? It changes right there from the archaic Greek. And it looks almost like a 7 in modern number systems. And then here it is again. But then up here, you can see it's sort of flipped around, right? This is the letter Gimel, ga, which over time turned into pronunciation ka. Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. Turned into ka, right? That g sound. Many of these sounds are very similar, right? Which is why so many letters have been mixed up from language to language and are sometimes interchangeable. So the letter C is the equivalent to the letter G, basically. So if you ever wonder, and I talk about this often, why the Freemasons use the letter G, it's the third letter. And all of these respond to numbers too. They correspond to numbers. So for example, Aleph would be representative of number 1 because it's the first letter. Beit would be number 2. And then Gimel or C or G would be number 3, right? So let's check out what Gimel is. You see it's sort of a bent line right there at the top. But remember, this is sideways. This one up here is sideways. Let's look at some more versions of it. So up here we have Aleph, Beit, which we learned was the house, right? Then we have this one. It looks like an L, but it goes all the way around. Instead of just going straight down and then off to the side, it goes all the way around because a person was trying to draw a body part and they didn't want it to just look like a stick figure. And we'll see what body part that was. Here it is again, Gimel. And here it is again. It looks like a block letter L. You see that? And then over here it is Gamma. And you can see that it still has that same angle right there, right? Okay. Some of these are upside down, some are right side up. This one right here looks like a check mark or the Nike swoosh, you could say, which is appropriate because that's exactly what the Nike swoosh is, in my opinion. Now, what that is it's a picture of a foot. Okay, so the first one, Aleph, was a picture of an ox. This one is a picture of a house. This one is a picture of a foot. So let's go over here and we would draw out, originally they would draw out, right? They would try to draw like an actual foot, like a sock, you know, just like a child would draw a foot or whatever. And that's what that was, right? So this right here was a foot. This was Gimel. Now, if you turn this sideways, I mean, you could just write it in stick form. Obviously, over time, people wouldn't draw it out trying to make it look three-dimensional and stuff, and it would look like an L. Or it depends on, you know, how things were at the time. Sometimes a check mark, etc. But that turned into this right here, which turned into this right here, C. Right, and this is also another reason why it looks so much like G. Right? Gimel is the exact same as G and C, actually. So C or G, Gimel, and it means foot. So let me talk about that one for just a bit. Here we are, Gimel, it means foot. Over here you can see it's kind of blurry, but it says foot, gather, walk, and all of these letters or all of these pictures could mean different things. That's why they had to add more letters to it to give it context, right? So for example, the ox head or the A, right, could mean strong, it could mean power, it could mean leader. Beit, which is house, could mean tent. It could mean family because families live in houses. It could mean house or something that is inside of. And then this one right here could mean foot, gathering, walking, and other things people do with their feet. Now, for me personally, it means and it implies a destination, which is why we see it on some of the older maps. There is a letter G right at the middle at the North Pole because it was a destination. Let me go ahead and get this off of here real quick. All right, so the letter C was Gimel, and here it is right here. Let's go back over to this one. I like this one better. This is one of my favorite alphabet variants. And also, you can learn what alphabet means. So alphabet comes from alpha, bait, or strong house, or strong collection, etc., right? Because the house also holds things, right? And it is alpha beta, or it is aleph bait. It's the first two glyphs in the entire collection, basically. And that's what alphabet means. It means a strong collection, right? Or strength inside of. This has strength. All of these glyphs right here have power because they can convey messages to other people. And this is what the Phoenicians, one of the reasons why theirs was such a popular variant of the alphabet, and one of the original ones, if not maybe the original one, is because the Phoenicians were traders. They were known as being seagoers, merchants, traders. We talk about them quite often here on my channel. If you want to know more about the Phoenicians and their origins, I highly recommend checking out a video I did about Tartaria, and that's also on my Ancient Oblivion playlist. Orchid Moonbeam, high five! Thanks for your support and joining us here. All right, so we've done Aleph, Beit, Gimel. This is like the Nike swoosh. It's a foot, and that's why it's on a shoe, in my opinion, right? And then Dalet. Let's come over to Dalet. This one's really interesting. It's basically D. So A, B, C, D, or A, B, G, D. Remember, K, K, and G, G are almost the exact same sound. It's just a different dialect. It's just a different pronunciation of the same sound. So D, this one's pretty hard sound across many cultures and languages and stuff too. So if we come over here and check this out, over here they drew what looks like a picture of a fish or something. Remember, there's different ways to draw these originally. This one is interesting. It looks like a backwards P triangle. It almost looks like the lowercase bait over here, but it's not. I'll show you what it is. It turned into a triangle over here. Okay, I'm going to show you the original form of it too. This is the archaic Latin form, and then of course the Roman form, which we're used to today, with a straight line down and then a curved off to the side. This is the form that survived to our day today. So we're on the letter D, which today is represented by a straight line down, if I were to draw the capital version of it, and then sort of a sideways dome. And I say it like that purposefully because I'm going to show you the original way that this was drawn. The original way that the letter D was drawn was like this. It had a ceiling with what looks like a dome light right underneath it, just like that. And that was the original letter D right there. Now what this means, or what this picture meant, was it was a picture of a door. So a door was the letter D, and door starts with the letter D as well, right? So how is this a door? And also this right here, let me show you the evolution of the original picture. So the original picture was a ceiling with this sort of inverted dome at the top of it. All right, so, oh, Anthrax Access just donated 10 memberships in the chat. What an honor. Wow, thank you. That's awesome. Okay, cool. So let's check this out. So the original form for the letter D was like a ceiling with this inverted dome underneath it, right? And as you can see, obviously, if you turn that sideways, it would be a lowercase letter D. Now, this means door. Now, remember, when they were carving this into hard substances, it would actually look more like this, because it would just be straight angles, straight lines, right? So this came to mean a door, this image right here. And this is also why sometimes those like Greek looking letters and stuff look so pointy, is because originally people were carving these. They didn't have calligraphy and ink and writing it all out like that, right? So how does this mean door? Well, if you follow my channel, I have a theory, and I follow an older cosmology, and I believe a lot of our letters actually stem from this too. But in the old world, let me draw something out for you here. In the old world, they had the land, which was flat, and a plane, and then they had a firmament, or the sky, which was a physical barrier over the land, just like that. As you can see, it actually looks like the letter D. However, I believe that there is actually an inverted dome at the top of the sky right here. And I have different reasons for that, so I'll give you the short explanation, because I know this isn't so much, a teaching on the plasma apocalypse or anything like that. But if I go to my little handy dandy eraser, or black, I guess I'll just use, right? Oh, hey, what happened? Oh, I'm still on the eraser. Okay. All right, cool. So this right here would be an inverted dome at the top of the firmament itself, right? Now, why would there be an inverted dome at the top of the firmament itself? Because from time to time, this world, hypothetically speaking, if it were to continuously build in pressure as new life adds to it and gases seep up from inside of Sheol, or the hollow recesses of our world, or Tartarus, or whatever you'd like to call it, the inner earth, basically. This bubble would fill up with pressure over time, and that pressure eventually would have to be released. Okay, there would be a pressure release from time to time, which gives rise to the apocalypse, or the uncovering of the sky, the actual sky breaking open. Now, what happens here is that a hole breaks open in this main dome at the top of the world. This portion would not be here. So let me just take that out real quick. So imagine this isn't here. A hole breaks open in this firmament at the top of the world. The atmosphere depressurizes. Everything gets sucked out. All the air and all the atmosphere gets sucked out of the top when our atmosphere depressurizes. Hypothetically speaking, you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, but when that happens, and then the electromagnetic barrier goes back up, this ice dome, or I believe it's made out of ice basically, it gets a new portion of it. But this actually has an invisible magnetic barrier to it as well, which would be like, which would be this shape right here. So basically all of those gases and stuff, they change into a hardened form, which is ice, and it creates a little inverted dome at the top whenever the electricity runs back through this barrier up here, if that makes sense. Okay, so basically if you have like a bowl magnet, it's shaped like this, right? And you put a little hole in it, can I just, nope. And you put a little hole at the bottom of your little bowl magnet like that, right? It'll create a little bubble on the top, a little invisible bubble of magnetism, right? So whenever you apply more of those gases that freeze and turn into ice, you get an inverted dome at the top of our dome, right? Which would be the door to the world. That was a long way of explaining that. I didn't really want to go into detail, but I thought, why not, right? Anyways, so that's my theory on why the letter D is shaped like that, because it is the ceiling of our world, or the firmament of the world, with a little door at the top of it. And this is the all-seeing eye, basically. This is the depressurization point of the world. A hole opens up in this right here. This wouldn't really be here. technically. There wouldn't be, the firmament would not continue. This would be like a crater if you're looking at it from above. And this is what people, I believe, saw when they looked up and they saw the all-seeing eye, or they saw this evil glowing red eye, because this would be on the other side of this. All this whole crater would be filled with ionized hydrogen, which is the ionosphere, or not the ionosphere, the plasmasphere that's wrapped around our world, which is ionized hydrogen. But anyway, so that's the letter D. It means door. And that's why we get that sort of triangle looking shape, because over time people just, they wrote it off quickly and it looked like this. Boom, right? So that became the letter D. All right, cool. So let me take that down. We'll move on to our next letter. So we've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, or A, B, C, D, and then E over here. You can actually see it kind of does resemble an E already. It sort of looks like a spirit, right? It sort of looks like a ghost that's sort of hovering around, sort of going boo or something like that, right? Which is appropriate because this letter right here, let's take a look at the older forms. So here's E over here. You can see the similarity of that sort of spirit shape, but it doesn't have the body part down here, right? And it's turned sideways. And if we go up and we follow this timeline all the way up here, we can see it actually looks more like a person with their arms up like this, right? Now we've talked about that particular shape on my channel quite often. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. See that? How it was more square right there? And this follows suit in Egyptian too, in hieroglyphics and in hieratic and stuff like that. They would draw things similar to this sort of square at the top because it's hard to carve. It's hard to carve in circles and stuff like that. You get more hard angles. But here we are with Hey, and it says a man with his arms raised, and it means to look, to reveal, or breath. This is very interesting. To look, to reveal, breath. It could also mean other things too. So it's good to cross-examine these. It's good to take different people's interpretations and compare all of them so we can see what is similar and what holds. Behold, this one says behold. I can't really read the rest of that, but you can see it's the same exact glyph right here. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and then Hey right here. And it's sort of an H sound, sort of a ha, which is why it means breath as well. So alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, which is the same type of E shape there. And over here is that sort of ghost shape. So let's concentrate on this shape right here. This is originally what it was. There's a picture of like a stick figure, and their arms were up, just like this. Now, I'm going to break this down according to my own perspective and my own cosmology, which is based upon and similar to that of the old ways, of the ancient ways. So remember how I showed you in the old world, they believed that we had a plane of existence with a firmament that went up and over, right? And then we had a door at the top or an opening at the top. Well, at the middle of the world, on ancient maps, there was said to be a mountain, right? Hold on, let me draw this out. There was said to be a high and lofty mountain. It was called Rupas Nigra, right? It was the tallest mountain in the world, and it was pictured oftentimes on many different maps. In particular, Mercator's Arctic map or his world map or his Arctic map too. They would put this high and lofty, what I call a plasma volcano or mountain. Now, usually this is how we would draw mountains, is just sort of this triangle type shape, usually without the bottom. You could still put the bottom though. And on my channel, I teach about how whenever we go through these polarity shifts, plasma or inner earth energy reverses direction. Right now it is being pulled inwards towards the heart of the earth and charging. But when we go through an electromagnetic shift, all of that energy, all of those gases are released out into the surface where we live on that plane, right? And all of those gases become ionized as they shoot out, and they turn into plasma or light, and they shoot out from various inner earth entrances, including volcanoes, caves, and things like that. So we would have the volcano shape or the mountain shape with a beam of energy shooting up out of it, right? Now, remember how there's like that depressurization point up here in the top? I'm just going to draw it out there real quick. Remember there's that dalet above right here? So there's the firmament, and there's the door or the way out of this world. Basically, that would be right where the polar star is, right? When the plasma shoots out of Mount Meru or rupus nigra, and it gets close up here, and the electromagnetic barrier is turned back on. Remember, this door, or this inverted dome, or this dalet at the top of the world is a strong magnetic current, and plasma is repelled by a strong magnetic current. So what you would see is this beanstalk, or this column, grow up or shoot up out of this plasma volcano, and then when it gets to the top, it would look like it was splitting off to the sides, conforming to this shape right here. And then depending on where you are in the world, you wouldn't actually see it from a, this dalet at the top, this opening, this is more of a side perspective. So in reality, most people would see some sort of circle up there in the sky, the all-seeing eye, right? And then this would split off like that. And this is the breath of God. This is the zephyr of the world. This is the wind that shoots up, that is responsible for what they call the polar vortex and stuff like that. The earth breathing, basically. It's Mother Earth breathing. So that's what the letter He is. Originally, it was a picture of a person going like this. This is also the Atlas pose, as some people would say. It looks like somebody was holding up another world above ours, or the sky itself. They would hold it up. And this is also a symbol for peace. So this is why when you don't want problems or whatever, like, you hold your hands straight up like this, right? Instead of holding them out to say, hey, look, I don't have any weapons. That's not what that is. It comes from holding your hands straight up, which means peace, right? Some people, eventually they would just hold up one hand and they would say hi, which means hayim, or life, or strength, or whatever. But they would hold up both hands, and that implied the breath of God, the breath of life, the plasma that shoots up out of this mountain down here, right? It would actually have like a cut off top right there, and you would have that beam of energy that shoots up, and then it sort of wraps around up at the top of the world, or at the top of the dome up there, right beneath the all-seeing eye, or right beneath the depressurization point. So that's why we have a picture of a person who's standing like this for the letter E. And then, of course, over time, right? Let's just here. Let's go over here and make a new one. I'm gonna fill this in, and we'll draw a new picture. I'll show you how it evolved over time, right? So it starts off with like a picture of a person with their hands up in the air, which is the Atlas pose, right? And you could draw this stick figure person in different ways, but this is typically how it was drawn, with their hands straight up in the air like that. And then over time, as you can imagine, people would stop writing all the body parts, just like the ox, right? Hey, it's me, Ms. V. Just gave me $20 as a donation. Thank you so very much. Thanks again to Anthrax Axis for the memberships, to Robin Hames, and to It's Me, Ms. V. You guys are very kind tonight. I appreciate the support. All right, so back to this picture of the letter E, right? Now, you turn this sideways, basically, because over time, they would just draw like that, right? Over time, it would be like this. This is like the psi symbol, also, over time. And then they wouldn't just draw like the top. They would just be like that, like that. And then this kind of changed over time. And then we get the letter E, basically, right? Now, that's a quick evolution of a particular glyph, but it gives you an idea of where it comes from. All right, cool. So we've covered the first four letters, Aleph, Bet, Gemel, Dalet, and He, which is that breath sound. He, ha. It's not really hey, but it's more like a ha, 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 ha. It's like breathing on somebody, which is the zephyr, which is the wind of the world. Thanks again, Miss V. Happy Friday to you as well, and happy whatever day it is for all the future people watching. All right, cool. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. So we've got Aleph from right to left, because remember, we had polarity shifts that caused people to go from being left-handed to right-handed. If you're writing with your left hand and you're using ink and stuff like that, it only makes sense that you're not going to want to write. If you're right-handed, I don't know how it looks on the video for you, but if you're right-handed and you write from left to right, that leaves all the ink unsmudged. But if you continue to use your right hand and you write from right to left like they used to, you would smudge the ink as you go, or you would mess up your clay or whatever it was that they were using, right? So the type of hand would correspond to the direction that people would read in, basically. All right, so we've got Aleph, which is the ox strength. We've got Beit, which is the house container. We've got Gimel, or C, which is the foot, which implies a destination, a place to go to, a place to meet at, or movement, walking, traveling, etc. We've got Dalet, which is an opening, a passage, a doorway, a portal, a gate, you know, similar types of things like that. Usually it's just a door, you could say. We've got Hey, which means spirit. Oh, did we cover what it meant? Actually, hold on. Let me just cover some of these real quick. So, a man with his arms raised, which means to reveal, right? Because that blue beam reveals much to many of us because it charges our world energetically and brings us back to a time of magic and spirit and things like that. Here it is over here. Behold. So a revealing, behold, new insight, things like that, because it fills our world with spirit. Some people would say window as well. Some people would also say that this implies a window, which is an opening where the air comes into or provides life or refreshing energy, spirit, stuff like that. Not so much spirit. Spirit's going to be more when we get into this glyph down here, which is noon. But let's go on to the next one, Vav. Now, Vav is very interesting, especially in conspiracy circles. It's kind of got a bad reputation. So let's talk about Vav. Here we have a proto-Sinaitic version of it right after Hey. We've got Vav right there, which looks like a column with a hole right at the top. Interesting, because it shares that with the stick figure man over here, the squatter man. Right? In Phoenician, it looks kind of like this, sort of a inverted dome with the line down. Over here, it's more like a glyph carving, right? And it looks kind of like a Y or something. Over here, it looks like a backwards letter F, which is appropriate, and I'll teach you why. And then over here, it actually turned into the letter F. This is really interesting. Let's check out what Vav means. All right, so we'll go all the way down here. It looks in the old language like a Y, because this is a carving, right? You can see right here, you can see that flux capacitor kind of a shape. This is what I like to call the flux capacitor of the world. It means a tent peg. It means to add, to secure, and it is a picture form of a hook. It doesn't really look like a hook when it's a Y, but I'll show you why. Okay, cool. Let's check out some other forms of it. Here's the Vav. Pay no attention to this P and this H whenever you see this on this particular presentation. The P means that it's the exact same in Phoenician as it would be in like Paleo-Hebrew, because this is a Paleo-Hebrew website. So P stands for Phoenician. It means that they share the same glyph. And the H is hieratic, which is a style of Egyptian writing, basically, that stems from hieroglyphs. So you see Vav right there, right? And it means a nail, a peg. Let's see, let's check out some other forms here. Vav. Over here, you can see the pronunciation. Wow. So this letter is our word, wow. It is an exclamation point, basically. So we'll explain that here in just a minute. You can see it's got different pronunciations from V, like a V as in vine, or a W as in W wine. It all depends on the accent and the dialects as they changed over time. Over here, they kind of skip it, actually, it looks like, in the Greek. So Greek goes from epsilon, which is the He, to the zeta, or the yod, or the Z. So we'll get to that one in just a bit. But over here, we've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav. There's that Y, there's that flux capacitor. So it means the picture of it was a nail, or the picture of it was a hook. Okay? At least that's how people interpreted it. But originally, it was this right here, which was the arms of the squatter man, the arms that we showed you earlier in that Hey, and then the beam. Okay, so originally it was this right here, or when you carve it out into rock, it would have more hard angles and it would look like a Y. It's not the letter Y, however, okay, it's not our modern letter Y. This was, it was seen as being a tent peg. So if you've ever gone camping and you need to secure your tent to the ground, right, you would take out one of these tent pegs. Let me use like this pin that I have as an example, right? You would take out a tent peg, you would take your string from your tent or your rope or whatever, you would stab it with your tent peg, and then you would hammer that into the ground. And that tent peg would connect the earth to the canopy, or the earth to your tent or the roof of your tent, etc., to keep it from blowing around in the wind. And it would provide stability, and it would connect. So this letter right here, Vav, which we'll just say V, A, V, represented a connector. And in modern Hebrew, that's what it is. It's literally the word and. So it connects one thing and another thing. So this is the vav. It is the connector, basically, right? And it is, originally, it's my theory that it is the column of light that shoots up out of Mount Meru, and then the hands of Atlas, or the Squatter Man, where it branches out at the top, just like we drew earlier, and it connected the earth to the heavens. This was the connector, the great connector, you could say, and it is equivalent to the number 6, right? Now, at the middle of the world, I believe that there were 3 great lights, not just one coming up out of Mount Meru, but there was an anode and a cathode on either side of that, and those also would shoot up into the sky, and they would branch off whenever they got closer to the dome above, which would give us 3 of them. 666, or Vav, Vav, Vav. And that's sort of the mystery behind that number and why it's equivalent to that. If you have 3 of these, you could look at them as like cross beams. If they go up and then they hit the dome, right? Then you could have 3 of them, right? And then of course you could like make a cross beam if you're drawing quicker or whatever. And this would be like in the middle, you would have Jesus, and then you would have the anode and the cathode on either side, right, of the world. And those are those 3 cruciforms or crucifixes that are often depicted together with one another. Oh, I just got a huge donation from Ken Albert, who donated $50. My gosh, thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it. And says, looking into our various native language groups, I find Phoenician roots. This is something that few want to look at. It raises many uncomfortable questions. I totally agree, but I like talking about things that make people a little uncomfortable, you know, to sort of shake things up from time to time and help us to run a self-diagnostic, you know what I mean? To sort of check ourselves from time to time. Anyway, so that's the root of the Vav. It looks kind of like this in modern Hebrew. So modern Hebrew is more like calligraphy drawing of a hook, you could say, right? And then this is sort of like on the Monster cans. They have like those 3 sort of like claw marks or whatever it is on the Monster energy drink. That's also the Vavs, or the triple Vav, you could say, right? And it's a connector. That's all you really have to remember about the Vav. So let's go back over here. We've got Aleph, we've got the ox, the house, the foot, the door, the spirit, or the breath, you could say. And then the connector, the hook, the Vav. That's what the hook is as well. It was like a fishing hook, okay? Not like a sword or anything. It was more like a fishing hook, something that you use to connect to something else, right? It was a connector. And this, I also want to do this before we move on to the next one. So the Vav, we would say, is the letter V. Okay? So let's see. A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, cool. That's what I want to talk about. So V, or Vav, the hook, also dependent upon the dialect, was pronounced V. Some cultures could not do the hard V sound. They would go U, or oo, oo, w, ooh, or it was a really long oo, which was a double oo, which gives us W, which is the exact same letter as the Vav, which is why they don't have a W in the ancient languages, because it was just a longer oo sound. And it just depended upon how they pronounced it, right? But then this hard V sound, look at this, V, V. Now, if you say that quick and fast over time, eventually the dialect is going to change this V into the letter F, which is why it's in the spot where the F would be. A, B, C, D, E, F, right? You see that? So the letter Vav, these 4 letters right here are basically oftentimes equivalent to one another. The V, the U, the oo, or the woo, or the however you want to pronounce that, right? And the F, the hard V, the F, right? The V, F, which is also, since we're having some fun here, let me just back off. I want to show you a really fun, wait, hold on, let me see which letter's next. Okay, Lamed. We haven't done Lamed yet, but we'll get there. So I'm going to show you the word elf real quick. I did a really fun presentation called The Secret of the Elves. So if we take a look at this letter elf, I mean this word elf, it's basically Aleph. It's another way to say Aleph or alpha, right? Now the alphas, they were the firstborn, or they were the ones who came into this world, the fallen ones, the ones who floated down from above, aliens, Anunnaki, however you'd like to see them. But let's check out the spelling of this, right? The word elf originally was just this word right here, L. It did not have the F at all. Their children, the L, let's talk about the word L real quick. I have not explained the L, the actual letter L right there, but I will, okay? So I'm just writing in regular modern English, okay? So this word L, E-L, this is a fun little teaching. Now, this is the word that is commonly translated in the Bible as God, right? But it doesn't really mean God. It doesn't really mean all-powerful, omnipotent, etc. It means mighty, because this in the picture form, this E is actually the ox head. It's the Aleph, and it means powerful or strong, right? The L, I'll show you in a bit. I'll just give you a little preview, but this L is actually a staff. Okay, it's upside down in the way we draw it, but it's a staff, and it means leadership, basically. So the word L, or God, meant mighty leader, which is why there were many mighty leaders that came down from above. I personally, I don't, like, as far as the concept of God, I totally believe in like an all-powerful, one energetic being, or whatever you want to call it. But I also know that there were many less powerful beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them, that came down from the skies and rose up from inside of the inner earth. And those were what people would say little God with a little g, or gods, or the gods, or the ancient, gods of all the myths and religions and stuff. Not that they would all individually equate to the all-powerful, mighty, one energy everywhere. You know what I mean? But anyways, that's where that comes from. Let me go ahead and get this erased off of here. So the word El meant God, or it meant mighty ruler or mighty leader, basically. But when they had children, they would say those who are attached to the mighty leaders, or they would call them the Elu, which meant of, because this is a connector, right? It's a hook, of the mighty leaders. Now the Elu turned into, of course, the Ilva, or the Elven race, the Elven. Or if we just use the singular, we would have the Elf, right? The Alpha, or the Alpha, etc., right? So this is where elves actually come from, if you could actually see that. So that's where the word elf actually comes from. It's a really fun teaching, and I really like to share that particular viewpoint of it. But that's the last portion of the Vav that we'll do for now, because I think all you really need to take away from the Vav is that it is a connector. It's a hook. And usually it connects something terrestrial to something celestial, originally, right? That's originally what it meant. Now, let's move on to Zayin. This one over here looks sort of like an italic letter, capital I. Almost like that. Let's look at some other representations of Zayin. Let's go way back. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin. I don't really like this version of Zayin, how they drew it on this one. So let's check out some other ones. Then the Phoenician, it looks more like the letter Z, Zayin, which is kind of how it sounds. Over here, it looks like the capital letter I. These are the two most common forms of it. Zayin, and it's just like our letter Z. It makes the exact same sound, which they say turned into the letter G. I'm not so sure about that, so let's move on. And these are all open to different people's interpretations, as different people have tried to study and reverse engineer ancient languages and letters and stuff. Now, this one I like. This one, you see how it says Zayin right there, right? Let me move that up a bit. Let's make this a bit bigger if I can. Sorry, it's kind of blurry there, but this is the one we're looking at. See how it sort of looks like a capital letter I right there? But look at, if we go further back in time to this one right here, you can see that top portion of the capital letter I curves downward. Ah, this is interesting. That curve of the top portion of that I, which is not an I, it's closer to the letter Z, basically. That's a clue as to what this is a word picture of. Now, over here, it says ho. Might not be what you're thinking if you're from the 90s. Food, cut, nourish. This is interesting. Let's look at some other examples of it. So let's find Zayin. Here it is over here. You can see that top portion curves downward again. Ah, plow. You see that? plow, weapon sometimes, and then cut off. So now as we're this is just like comparative mythology, right? We're taking in all these different interpretations of what this picture was and what it meant to people, and we're finding all of these similarities. A plow, what do these things have in common? A plow, a weapon to cut off, a hoe, food, cut, nourishment, etc. Do you see how we're starting to find a trend there? There it is again. Let's see. This would be zeta or zeta, zayin. Let's see. Over here, we saw that one already. So basically, it's a picture form of. How do I draw it? Hold on, let me make sure I can just draw this correctly here. Of a plow, basically, is what it was. Okay. So this was an old plow. I'm doing my best to just draw it. I don't really know exactly how to draw a plow. Let's look up a picture of a plow, actually. Farm plow. There we go. Just so you guys can get it, understand what this is. So these are plows, okay? These are the things that people would hold on to, almost like in the old version, they didn't have machines and stuff. They would have two handles on the side, and excuse me, originally people, they would plow their own little gardens or whatever, or they had bigger ones and animals. They would hook the plow up to the bull, which was the first letter, and these people would hold on to the handles and they would plow. Which is why this top portion is like curved downward, right? It would plow the earth. It would divide the earth. It would cut the earth, and the whole point of it was to create a space in the dirt so you can plant your seeds, basically. Which is why, if we look at all of these different descriptors of zayin, which is sort of like the letter Z, but it's not the letter Z. I mean, it is kind of like the letter Z, but I'll show you here in a minute. So, food. So this interpretation, food, the plow is associated with food, and it meant to cut, or to cut the ground specifically. It can also mean nourishment. People can, and these are not hard and fast, like this is what it meant. This is what it meant to some, or to many at certain points in time. Zayin, the plow, a weapon. A weapon is also, you could assume that someone meant to cut a person instead of the earth itself, right? So in that case, it would be represented by a weapon to cut off, right? What else we got? Anything else here? Zayin, where is it? That one doesn't really have a descriptor. All right. Anyways, you get the point. It's a plow, basically, and it means to cut. I wouldn't say it means to cut or to divide for like a negative purpose, although it could be interpreted as such, but more of a division or a cutting in order to bring about life or growth, just as a plow does, right? So that is the letter zayin, which is pronounced z, just as, actually, it's just z, not z. That's just me being a child. It's z, just like that. Almost like an S, but like the hard Z sound, right? Almost like you're trying to do like a fly buzzing. Z, okay? There's other letters that sound similar to that. But anyways, that is the plow. Let's move on to this next one over here. So we've got Aleph, Bet, Gamel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, and then Het. Het. You see this one that looks sort of like a ladder? That's the letter Het. It's a hard guttural. They call that a guttural sound whenever you cause the back of your throat to sort of close up and then you breathe through it. That's a guttural. Het. Some people couldn't do that though, right? So with accents and dialects over time, it was just het or het. Or some people couldn't do het, and they would try to force people by writing a C in front of it. So to go k-ha, het, het. Like, and it turned into Chet, which I'm going to get rid of this and draw it out for you. So you can see, and some people's name comes from this too. So Chet, right? If we were going to say it in a sort of American cowboy accent, it would be Chet. But this is really, that did not exist. They added that C to try to force, just like a vowel. Some of you learned in school that the vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, and sometimes W, and sometimes C, and sometimes other letters too. That just means that sometimes other letters were added to try to force a person to be able to pronounce it the original way that it was pronounced, which is het, with the H, a hard H, just like that. right? But people who couldn't, people would try to write it out so that they would purposefully pronounce het, and they would try to get them to pronounce that C sound or that G, that get, which is also why you have G and H together so often in the English language, right? You see like GH, like ghost is the word that comes to my mind right now. Gah, 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 host. A ghost is a host, right? It's basically the exact same word. A ghost and a host. That's why Beetlejuice is the ghost with the most and he's the host, etc. I don't know, I'm just goofing around. But anyways, you can see how it's the exact same thing, right? And sometimes people added letters to try to force a pronunciation. Those are technically vowels in the older languages. So this one right here, let's get back to the actual letter. Het, and see what it meant in its picture form. Oh, well, let me go back further. All right, no problem. We'll just delete that then. Pow. All right, boom. Let's get rid of our little picture of this dude. Oh, where did it go? Okay, hold on. I'll fix this up. A new layer, boom, and then we'll delete this one. You guys remember these? Is this make it easy for you to remember? I feel like it should be easy for us to understand or have a better understanding of what our glyphs that we call letters, where they came from and what they actually mean. All right, cool. So let's get back to the letter het. And let's look at a picture of it real quick. So it looks over here almost like a ladder, right? So I'm going to draw that out right here. We'll do like sort of a ladder. It's got these side beams and then 3 cross beams in the middle. Okay, this is a crude drawing. Now it looks like an 8, right? If you were to make this into circles, it would look like this, which is appropriate because if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Het is the 8th letter of the Phoenician alphabet. Now, there's some symbolism here that we're going to get into, but first let's do a comparison, right? Let's look for the het. Now over here you can see that that ladder is sideways originally. So let's draw it the original way that it was drawn, right? So we've got a top section, or you could say a roof, and then we've got a floor section on the bottom with 3 beams going straight down. It looks just like the Roman numeral 3. Basically, that is the original form for the het. Now remember, these letters can turn over time as they have up here in these above examples, but originally it was represented by a ceiling on the top up here, a ground on the bottom, and 3 beams shooting up out of it, right? Now, this is my interpretation. This is the sky up here, this is the ground down here, and this is the beam that shoots up out of Mount Meru in the middle, as we talked about earlier. And this is the anode and the cathodes that shoot up from their respective plasma volcanoes or islands on either side of Hyperborea, or that island at the middle of the world. Now, let's see what this meant in the old languages. Let's take a look at it. Now, if you look here, you can see the het right there, the sideways ladder with the 3 beams. And it means, or it meant, it was a picture that conveyed a wall, something outside, to divide half, because in this particular letter 8, it looks like you're dividing it in half as well. But originally it was closer to a wall and outside. In particular, a wall that was outside. So if we look over here, it says a tent wall, a fence. This, I know it's kind of hard to read right there, but it says fence, and separation, or a separator. Ah, now that we're starting to compare all these, we're starting to see some similarities. Eta is what this turned into, or the letter H, basically. And here it is again. Let's take a look, and let's look at all of these various meanings. A wall, something that is outside, something that acts as a divider, something that acts as a fence, something that is a tent wall, or a separator inside of a tent. And also, all right, so that's about it. So basically this right here meant boundary, an outdoor boundary specifically. Okay, so let me take this off. Boom. All right, cool. So this right here meant a boundary. So in the old world, back during the time whenever the energy was reversed and people read and wrote from right to left or whatever, and there was telepathy, and there was magic, and there was mystery, and there were monsters, and all of these things that I talk about that happen when these beams of energy shoot up out of that plasma volcano, all of them around the world, right? It would actually not have a top on it right there. It would be missing a top because it's a volcano. But that beam of light shoots up out of those volcanoes. All the world across, you would see these beams of light, these poles, these columns, etc. And they would fill the world. They would reach up sometimes, depending on how big they were, they would reach up. Those lights would touch the sky, and they would act as the hooks of the world, the columns of the world, the tent poles of the world. And at the middle of the world, if you did have Mount Meru or Rupus Nigra, right, in the middle, and it shoots up its very own beam. I'm just using the color orange just for simplicity. It shoots its beam up to the sky, and then you have these lesser ones off to the side acting as anode and cathode. They would shoot their beams up to the sky, and you would have 3 of them at the center of the world. If you did, in fact, have an anode, a cathode, and a neutral point, which is Mount Meru itself. They would reach up and they would touch the heavens, right? And then this would be representative by the ground itself. These are outdoor boundary markers. These are what I call the pillars, specifically these 2 right here. So this one and this one. These are the pillars, I believe, of Hercules. They are boundary markers. They are the furthest point that people can go before they can go no further, or if they're able to get further and to transcend those boundaries or those boundaries of the world, they would enter into what seems like an entirely different world where they were no longer on Earth, basically, but they have gone into a place of magic or another realm or paradise or the Garden of Eden, etc., right? So they were known as being outdoor walls, the walls of the earth, the pillars of Hercules. Hercules is the guy who holds up the sky, basically. He's the Atlas symbol, right, with the depressurization point there in the middle. This was Hercules. This was Atlas. This is the squatter man symbol that you see written on so many different petroglyphs, etc. And then on either side, he would look like he was holding up 2 staffs, or sometimes these were interpreted as animals, or these were columns, and this turned into the story in the Bible in the Old Testament of Heracles. Was it Heracles? No, Samson. This is Samson, sorry. Totally different name. But Samson, who pushed and broke the pillars of the house, which is the world, symbolically speaking, and when these pillars came crumbling down, the roof fell down, or the sky collapsed, or the sky broke apart, etc., right? Anyways, those are the pillars of Hercules. They're known as the boundaries of the world. Some people drew them with the sky and the ground, and they drew 3 of them, right? But then, sometimes they wouldn't add the central one. And these can all go into flux too, so keep that in mind because it's plasma and it's earth energy. So sometimes one would appear, the other one would appear, etc. Sometimes they would just draw it as in like this, the sky, the ground, and then they would just draw the side pillars way off here to the side. So this looks like it's a box, but it's not. This is actually the sky, the ground, and then 2 supporting pillars on the sides, as you can see there. And then they would just draw the middle one. Boom. Mount Meru, right? Which is exactly how we see that it was drawn right here. It's just that they flipped it around. You see how it's like sideways now? Well, it's still appropriate because it still represents these beams that acted as Jacob's ladder that went up to the sky, and that's why it kind of has a ladder shape to it, but it's the letter 8, and that's where the letter 8 comes from, and it means a boundary. So, for example, if you draw 2 of these together right next to each other, we get the number 88, which esoterically, like in the movies and stuff like that, right? 88 implies time travel, or it implies somebody who travels from one realm to another, or from one world to another, or from one reality to another. People who can transcend boundaries of this realm that we live in now. They're time travelers, basically, or they're seen as time travelers, or a type of time travel. But what this really is a boundary and a boundary, or pillars of Hercules. So those who have the 88 marker are those who are able, I'm just pretending I have an 88 badge on my arm right now, but those people represent the people who traveled. They were explorers. They were people who pushed boundaries. They were people who transcended boundaries. They were people who went from one realm to another realm. They were the people who were able to cross over or go between the pillars of Hercules in order to get to a brave new world, in order to get to another place, basically. All right, cool. So that's het, and it means an outdoor boundary or marker or wall or separator, right? All right. And I totally don't think that the Pillars of Hercules are in Gibraltar or anything like that, but that's a whole different subject. All right, cool. So here's what we're going to do. We are on, let's just do a review. Aleph, Bet, Gemel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet. We're going to do Tet next, and then we're going to take a quick bathroom break because this is, I hope I'm not long-winded. I hope you guys are having a good time. So Tet, I like to explain these things in detail as well because I feel like I want people to be able to remember stuff, you know? I would like to remember things. I'd like to, not just have a quick McDonald's version of a teaching or whatever. Isabella! Isabella's been a member of the Good Vibe Tribe for 2 months. 77s. Very good. Good to see you, Isabella. All right, so let's go over to this next one, Tet. This is what I like to call the X-Men symbol because that's basically the X-Men symbol, right? A circle with an X right in the middle. Or you could say X marks the spot. The spot is the circle around it, okay? And it's directly related. So let's check out these older versions of the Tet, which is basically the letter T. It's like a hard T. It's just a t sound. Okay, so here it is up here with a circle with an X in the middle of it. Let's scroll on down. It basically retained its shape for quite some time, and then it sort of disappeared in, what was this, the Greek or Latin? It sort of disappeared in the Latin because they moved it over to where the Latin letter T would be. So they did some shifting of the alphabet. As you can see, they sort of replaced, it disappeared, they put it somewhere else in the alphabet, and then they just had the iota or the yod replace it. Okay, so that's why it says I and J are not equal to Tet. Tet stops here, and they just stuck it in down here where the T would be, way down here, you'll see. Because there's 2 letter T's in the ancient languages. There's actually 3 technically. But I don't want to confuse you too much. So Tet, T, one form of the T sound is a circle with an X in the middle. Let's check out some variants. We've got this one over here, right next to me. You can see that? Now, over time, they just did like a little circle, and then they just like put a hook inside of it, which is what it turned into the modern Hebrew, which is like that. And the tip of that hook looks like a serpent's head. So sometimes you'll see the translations. It meant a basket. So this right here, the outer circle meant a container of some sort. It meant a basket, something that holds other things, specifically a food basket, specifically a basket that held something that was nourishing or food. And it also can imply to surround, because that circle is the surrounding factor. To contain, it can also mean mud and clay, which is also very interesting. I'll share my ideas with you in just a minute. Anthrax Axis just donated 5 more memberships. Oh my gosh. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And Ken Ray Albert just donated $10 to me personally. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate both of you. All right, so let's check out this letter Tet. Let's do some more comparisons. As you can see up here, it says the letter P for Phoenician, which meant that it is the exact same glyph in Phoenician. It's hard for me to make out what this says up here. I think this says snake, so I'm going to explain the snake symbolism. What else we got? Boom, boom, boom. All right, so I'm just going to explain it to you. Basically, we have the circle and the X right in the middle. And this is the letter Tet, right? And it conveyed things like nourishment, food, basket, but also strange things, or container, right? Specifically food container, but it also meant snake. So some people thought that this was like an image for like a basket. I'll just try to draw a crude basket there. And like a snake inside of a basket, right? Some people thought that this was like maybe some weird version of like a top-down view of like a basket with a snake inside of it. I'll explain to you what I believe this is. And in order to do this, I need to pull up Mercator's map of the Arctic. So we're going to pull up this picture, and right after this letter, we're going to take a break, just so you know, so you guys can grab something to drink, use the bathroom or whatnot. I always like to pull up the largest size of image. That way we can see it the best way. I right-click on this image right here, and then I just go down to open the image in a new tab, click on that new tab, and we have a huge, big version of what I would like to present to you, the origin of the letter Tet. That same exact letter. This is that mysterious island mass that was drawn and depicted on many, many ancient maps, especially going back before like the 17 and 1600s. People drew an island mass that was known to be at the center of the world. It was known to be located at the North Pole. And what it is it is a circle, or circular in shape, as you can see, and it is crossed by 4 rivers. There's actually a double circle right there in the middle if you include this lake that's in the middle. And it was crossed by 4 rivers. This was the area that was known as the basket of the world, or the cradle of civilization, or more accurately, the crater of civilization, because it's a valley, as you can see. It's a bowl. It's sort of a bowl shape, or a plate. Plate is probably a better description for it, but you could say bowl as well, because it has this high and lofty rim all the way around the outside. All of these mountain ranges surround the outside portion of this inner central land on this map. And I believe that that's because of electricity and what happens whenever there's cosmic discharges of electricity that come from above, and terrestrial ones that come out of this mountain. Rupus nigra at the middle, just as we talked about, right? So there's that plasma volcano that I showed you, right? Or that bottom triangle, which shoots up that blue beam into the sky, right? And this is the circle, or the Tet. This is the circle image, which meant a basket, a bread basket, a crater, a grail, a container of life, something that held life in it. Why? Because this is the area where life, people experienced life in abundance because of that beam of energy that shot up from Mount Meru right here, right? And it goes up and it creates this sort of electrical dome around this island. Which might help to explain where all these mountains came from, because electricity has the ability, especially a strong electrical current, can pull land up. It can pull mud up, it can pull sand up into the air, and then petrify it and change the chemical bonds and actually turn it into rock if it's mud and stuff like that, right? So on the outside, we would have the bottom portion. If you're looking at the top down, imagine a dome, an electrical dome that covers this central island, which is, in my opinion, Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, etc., right? And if you lived inside of here, you would be so filled with life. All of the vegetation would be gigantic. It would be very fruitful. Regenerative qualities would exist in this particular location right here, or be much stronger than those outside of this particular location. And this was the cradle of life. This was the grail that held this stick figure in the middle that was seen as dying on a cross, or Odin on a tree, etc. This is that grail. This is the X that marks the spot, which is marked by a gemel, or a destination, as we talked about in the ancient languages. And on old maps, they would put a G right here, right? But anyways, this is the circle with the X in the middle, and it was the Tet. So any of those civilizations that stemmed from this location, those who had this as their place of emergence, because they came up out of this central point and they wandered about and they went around, and eventually this electromagnetic dome or barrier went down, and there was no longer any point to stay here, any reason to stay here, so they ventured out. They became Phoenician, or people who came from this firebird that shot up out of the center of the world, or the phoenix, you could say, and they started island hopping, and they became traders, and they became nomads, and they became those from the Tet, right? Or the Tot, or the Thoth, you could say, right? So if we go over to our drawing here, it's the T and the T. Okay, T is sort of how you would write this glyph, right? This is the same as this right here, Tet or Tot. So those who came out of this particular region tend to have, according to like ancient myths and legends and stuff, they tend to have advanced technology, right? Or advanced intellect and learning. So this is where we get the word thought, or the ancient god Thoth, right? These were the traders, these were the merchants, these were many different people, but they were also called Tat, or the Tatarians, or the Tatarians, or the Tatarians, basically, or Tartarians, you could say, which I did a whole video about. So for more information on Tartarian and the origin of the Tartarian Empire, as people would call it, or the Tartarian tribe, or whatever, or for many other different types of tribes who come from this location, go check out my my Ancient Oblivion playlist and look for something that looks like this and it says Tartaria or Tartarian on it. Because we really break that whole concept down as this being the place of emergence, right? This is the X that marks the spot. This is why, you know, they draw like an X on a map or whatever, with a circle around it. Usually there's another glyph that's another form of the letter T that we'll get to towards the end. It's actually the last one, and it's the same glyph, but without the circle. So we'll talk about that too. All right. So just to recap real quick, let me take that down. This might come in handy as a reference, so we'll come back to that. So we have covered so far, I'm going to say them in English, A, B, C, D, E, F. This is actually not G, so it'd be like Z. And this is sort of H, or a CH type of a sound. And then T, or the letter Tet. All right, cool. So, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet. And then the next one we're coming to is Yod, which is the 10th letter. Oh, also this Tet represents the number 9 because it's the 9th letter, right? So if you've seen my Truth in Movies, right, you know that this there's the movie 9 that we broke down. It represents people who have survived an apocalyptic event. The Nemo, the Nem, the Tet, those from the Tree of Life, or from between the 2 pillars of Hercules, etc. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. That way I can go use the restroom and maybe get a refill of my iced coffee that I have going on here. And I'll see you guys here in just a bit.
Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye, and waters shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk, and in the air men shall be seen in white and black and even green. For in those wondrous far-off days the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men in trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow as witches do. On broomsticks now there'll be a sign for all to see. Be sure that it will certain be. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane and babes decrease, as wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Pictures alive with movements free, boats like fishes beneath the sea. When men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. Then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. For those who live this century through, in fear and trembling this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storm will rage and oceans roar, when Gabriel stands on sea and shore. And as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new be born. Fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on to apply himself Too late, for mankind has earned deserved fate. His mask smile, his false grandeur will serve the gods, their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee, king, lord, and serf. And men will die of thirst before the oceans rise to mount the shore, and lands will crack and rend anew. You think it's strange, it will come true. And in some far off distant land, some men, oh such a tiny band, will have to leave their solid mount and span the earth, those few to count. And those surviving this will then begin the human race again. But not on land already there, but on ocean beds stark, dry, and bare. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and stink of rotting bodies of beast and man, of vegetation crisped on land. And those that live will ever fear the dragon's tail for many years. But time erases memory. You think it's strange, but it will be. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes to view, and spew out men of like unknown to mingle with the earth, now grown cold from its heat. And these men can enlighten the minds of future man, to intermingle and show them how to live and love, and thus endow the children with the second sight, a natural thing, so that they might grow graceful.
All right. I hope you guys had a good break. I had to go out and walk my puppy. I had to go to the bathroom. So I have a dog named Scruffy, who is, I think, 5. In dog years, she's 5, or she's 5 years old. So in dog, she's like 35 or 40 or something. Anyways, I always walk if I have to go to the bathroom, I always walk my dog first. Because they experience time much differently than we do. They're holding it forever if you have a house dog that lives inside. So I always walk my puppy. So oftentimes, I will do that, just so you know. So if I have to use the bathroom, I always go walk my puppy. That's why it took a little longer for my break. So I just want to say welcome to the show. I hope you guys are learning some stuff. Hopefully some stuff sticks. That's really my hope with all this. And I'm taking my time with this presentation. So it's I very well may do some shorts, some YouTube shorts with each letter. I'm not sure how that might work. I know some people prefer shorter teaching, some people longer, etc. This is sort of my style, and we will pick up a little quicker in round 2 whenever we move on, because I feel like people are starting to get the point. All right, cool. So just as a recap, we're studying ancient Phoenician, which originally our letters were picture form. Originally our letters were pictures. They weren't just glyphs that people had no idea what they meant or why they looked like that. Nowadays, people just accept it because that's a slave mentality, right? We don't ask questions. We don't ask how things originated. Where did I come from? Where did our alphabet come from? We're just told that's just the way it is. So I'm not a big fan of the word just in that particular sense. I like the word just when it means like justice and a just cause and what is right and good and pure, not just as in just accept it or it's simply this or simply that. I'm more of a complex individual. I like complexity. If complexity means knowing more about myself and the world that I live in, then I like and I'm proud of being complex. All right, cool. So let's move on. We're talking about the Phoenician alphabet. Here's a variant of it. Here's a version of it. We've got the bull, the house, the foot, the door, the ghost, you could say, the spirit, the nail, the plow, the walls. These are really more than one wall, right? So the walls are the boundaries of the separators. And then we've got the basket or the bread basket of the world, the tet, right? And I was checking out you guys' chat. I was checking out the chat and stuff. I like that people are making so many correlations as well. Sound check, thumbs up if you guys can hear me, if we're good. I do have to make sure that I do everything correctly. All right, next up is Yod. Now check this one out. Check this one out. Can anyone in the chat guess what this next letter is a picture of? Just, you know, just if you know, go ahead and say it. If you want to make a guess, what is this one? This one right here. What do you suppose this is an image of? If this was an emoji, what would this be? What do you suppose? Some of them are pretty obvious. Some of them are, you know, it takes a little more research. Oh, the hot cross bun. Yeah, that's perfect. Iron Horse, you actually make a really good point in the chat. The tet is the hot cross bun, or a form of it. All right, let's see. All right, so I'm going to let you guys go ahead and guess on that. And then since you're all about 10 seconds behind me anyways, I'm going to share with you what this is. This is the letter I in the modern language. So I, me, personifying something and making it personal to you, individual, representing you or yourself, the letter I, okay? This is not the picture of an eye, which is this one down here, but this is an image of a hand, or more specifically an arm. The upper arm portion right here, you can see is up here, goes down to the elbow, and then it splits off at the end, a hand. This is a rudimentary arm, basically, and it represents the arm. So let's check out some of the original versions of it. Here's the tet where we were. As you can see here, this top one's kind of messed up, but it's sort of like a hand with fingers and stuff like that, or an arm, I should say. Keep in mind, this next glyph, Kaf, is a hand. Okay, so the one we're looking at is actually an arm, and it was written like this, like a Z. It was sort of written eventually, sort of like that is what it turned into. So if you ever see a Z with a line through the middle, that's actually the letter I in our modern languages. And then a Z that sort of is italics and slanted or whatever, it looks just like a capital I or whatever, so that's sort of where that comes from. These letters evolved over time. But this was an arm. It was basically a bent arm and a hand, or an open hand, and it meant work. Let's check out some comparisons and see what it says over here. So look down here next to me, next to my arm, you can see it says arm and a closed hand, work, throw, or to throw, to move. Basically, I'm interpreting this as action, something that is action that is taken with your arms, work that people do. You know what I mean? So you're using your arm to move about and stuff like that. Not just the hand itself, which we'll talk about next, which is more grasping, but the arm, which is used to imply action or movement or work, etc. Right? So here we have Yod. This is the letter Yod. It's related to like Yoda, if you're a Star Wars fan. Arm and hand, works or deeds. So this is the works or the deeds that people do. Here it is down here. You can see Yod, and it would be Yoda if you say it with that sort of childlike accent, right? Yoda, or which is where Yoda comes from. Y. This is the actual Y, not the Vav, right? But this is where our letter Y comes from. It's also the letter I as well, and this turned into the letter J over time. So you can see over here it is iota, or iota, right? The iota, the lowercase version of it kind of looks like a J, but it's backwards. It's flipped around, right? And then over here, we've got the arm version of it. And it basically implies work or deeds or actions or things that are done by an individual who the arm is connected to, right? So that one's pretty easy. I'll give you a little backstory, something interesting, some trivia to know, is the letter I, right? This is our capital letter I, and it came from whenever they drew it like this, like that. So that sort of turned into that, right? If you go from right to left, turned into the capital letter I. And then over time, the lowercase, they just did like that. And then that, when they capitalized this lowercase letter I, they would actually just put a hook on it to sort of make it fancy. And boom, we get the J. So the J is directly related to the I, which looks like a Z, which is very interesting. And it means work that is done by an individual, personal work, the things that we do, our deeds, right? And we are defined by what we do. Our actions define us, basically. Or our actions, I should say, describe the invisible quality that exists on the inside of us, or our spirits, basically. So our actions prove what we are on the inside, which is a secret that nobody can see, but our actions betray that secret, which is why we use the letter I, which is actions, for ourselves, for us. For these are our actions. This is me. This is who I am, right? So our actions is I, basically. All right, cool. So that's the letter I, or you could say Yod in the old language. Let's move on to the next one. Next one we got, here is the letter I. Here's tet, and then yod, or I. And then this one looks like a smiley face. You see how it's kind of like a funny smiley face? That one's the hand. That's actually just a hand. It's a picture of like a hand. You know, sometimes it had a thumb, sometimes not a thumb or whatever, but that's supposed to be an open hand. Oh, I just got a comment in there. Paradox Lust says, yes, Jay, that is the secret of secrets. I'm glad that you know that. All right, cool. I wish I could be in the chat and do the presentation at the same time. But anyway, so let's go to this one. Kaf. So let me pull up some variants of it. So here it just looks like a happy face. In the old ways, it looks like 4 fingers, basically. Dilip Funbar. Hey, Dilip Funbar. Welcome, Dilip. All right, so we've got the hand, basically. And then as you can see, in the old ways, it was sort of drawn out like this is the hand with some fingers on it, right? That's the easiest way to draw that. Instead of drawing that, I mean, I'm sure originally it looked more like an actual hand. You know what I mean? It looks like I don't know. This is how mine looks like the Eye of Sauron. That's terrible. Like, don't draw it like that. Okay. I'm not the best artist. But anyways, it looks like a happy face. This is Kaf, or this is the letter K. Okay. So over time, instead of remember, they were carving things out into rock and other stuff initially. So it was easier to do to just draw, and then like that, some straight lines, or even to just go ahead and go like that and to just like make some fingers like that. And then you turn that sideways, and that's where we get the letter K, which is why it has a straight line, pow, pow. Or if you want to be fancy, you add a little curvature to it, or things like that. You know what I mean? Some people draw it with this, and then another finger comes out right there, right? But basically, this is the hand. And let me go ahead and erase this portion right here. And let's see what it says. Let's see if we can get some context for the meaning. It says open palm, bend, open, allow. So these are all the things that are implied by an open hand, right? It's not a closed hand, it's an open hand. So it's all the things that can be implied by a picture of an open hand, like giving things or gifting things to somebody, or a present, or presenting things, or peace, or you know what I mean? Like whatever you associate with it, it's all personal. It all depends on how you associate it, right? We got kaf up here, which says palm of the hand, open, right? Let's see, anything else here? Oh, kappa. So this is the kappa. This is the Greek letter K. So it would just be the hand with the fingers or whatever, really rudimentary drawing of it. And that is an open hand. So it implies things like to be open, to give to people, to sometimes even to show, or maybe to reveal, gifts and stuff like that. These are all, it can mean many different things, as do all of these glyphs. Okay. And that's why it's important for us to be able to put glyphs together, right? So that we can give more context to what it was that was originally meant. Because if I just drew a picture of a cow or a bull and a bull's head, man, if I asked everyone in the chat, what does this mean to you? We would get, 20 different things. But if I added another letter to it, like remember our first one that we learned, that first word, the container or the house, right? Or you could also just draw the horizon with a tent on it, right? Then we start getting context for an actual word that we're building with these glyphs that we're making. So we're sort of forcing the reader to visualize what we ourselves are visualizing, which is very difficult, which is another reason why, I believe that doing this, drawing, carving out things, right, is basically what it was originally, was outlawed originally, that this was not good. That what we're doing, which is what we do in the modern world right now, that there were those who knew that writing would eventually lead to mistranslations and things being taken out of context and misunderstood, etc., which is the furthest we get from our origin, which is telepathy, which is where you know exactly what I mean because I shared my exact feeling of it, my exact mental picture, my exact experience, my exact memory, my exact smells, my exact feelings and stuff with you. I gave them to you directly, telepathically. But whenever telepathy disappears because of all the energy that used to be pouring out from the earth herself, retracted and went back into the earth to charge, right? Telepathy went away with that. And so over time, people weren't able to just give your experience to someone else to share with them, right? After a while, they had to actually touch them to send that energy into their body and into their mind to share it with them. And then after a while, touching people would not work. And so they had to actually, had to try to figure out a way to, like, you know, give something that exists only inside of you. You cannot open yourself up to others any longer. Some people still could, and some people still can. So they had to actually, like, become artists, and they had to draw it and write it out and physically draw it out and try to force the connection from this image to this image and show people these are together. You know what I mean? And so this is how language began. This is after the fall of the tower, or the fall of the blue beam, the fall of the column, the pillars of Hercules, all that stuff, right? When the towers go down. All right, next up, let's check out what we got next. Next up, we've got, let's see, that was Yod, or Yoda, Kaf, and then Lamed. Ooh, so this is the one I did earlier. Remember whenever I showed you the origin of the meaning of the word elf, or ilu, or elva, right? This is the L. And as you can see here, it looks like an italics form of the letter L. So let's check this out real quick. Let's show you some comparisons. Up here, you can see it kind of looks like a question mark, which is very interesting. This one actually looks more like a hook than the Vav does. But this is like a shepherd's staff. Okay, so this was like, you know, those old school hooks where they pull people off the stage in like the 30s or whatever, you know, like a hook. Like this was a shepherd's hook. If you ever look at like hold on, let me pull a picture of a shepherd's hook. All right, so we'll do shepherd's hook. Boom. It's like a cane, basically, but it's like a big hook, right? And people would use this. It was a staff that had a hook on it, actually. And they would use it to, like, grab the sheep if they had collars or whatever, or to put it around their neck to sort of gently guide them in the right direction. And this is where we get the meaning for this glyph. Originally, this glyph, which was sort of this shepherd's hook or question mark or whatever, was designed to lead the sheep. So they could take their staff, this was much longer, right? And somebody would be standing here holding this, obviously, right? So we draw a little stick figure dude, and he's holding onto his staff or whatever, and he's watching over his sheep. There you go. He's holding onto his staff, right? So this letter originally was bent at the top and went down like a cane. But like I said, we went through these polarity shifts, and people just started seeing things upside down, started writing things slanted, started writing things in different ways. And there's probably different reasons for that. But for whatever those reasons are, this hook, this staff, I should say, became upside down. And that gave rise to the letter L. So let's go ahead and draw that out real quick. So this right here became this, which is easier, which became this, which became a capital L, right? Okay, so these are all what this means. So the letter L, anytime you have an L sound, la 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 la, right? That sound represents a picture, which is a picture that implies things like leadership, or teaching, or guidance, okay? So that's where that all comes from. And that's why we have the whole elf, right? Or the mighty. I mean, it should technically be like, you could draw it in different ways. But anyways, that's the elf, that's the ilu, etc. So the L, or lamed means teaching and guidance and leadership and stuff like that. And here it is over here, right? There it is right there. An upside down, sort of slanted shepherd's staff. That's what that is. All right, cool. Next up is the letter M in the modern language. It's just a scribbly line. It looks just like the letter M. Basically, it's very close to that. Let's check out some comparisons. So here we have lamed at the top, and then we have a squiggly line. This one has way more. This is like an M if you just keep on making it go, right? And then this down here is really interesting because it has sort of like a W on the top with a line that goes down. I'm going to explain this to you too. So here we have it again. sort of that M shape with a little extra line on it, and then a line going really far down. I'm going to explain what this means in just a second. This turned into our letter M, our modern letter M. Now let's check out what it means. Let's check out some explanations of mem. And that's how you pronounce that. It's mem, like Madam Mim, if you have ever seen the cartoon version of The Sword in the Stone. All right, M, here it is up top. Oh, there's Lamed right there. It looks like a fish hook, but it's not. This is upside down. See, it says shepherd's staff, teach, a yoke, etc. Anyways, oh, Carrie Musgrave, high five to Carrie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome when you do those donations. Like, I spend that to make my life better and my son's life better. So thank you. Like, sincerely, thank all of you, and especially you in this moment, Carrie. I appreciate you. All right, so let's check this out. So mem. Here it is right here. If you were able to read this, it says water, chaos, mighty, blood. Let's see if we have any other ones for mem. Here's mem right here. And it's got that letter P. Remember, that means it's the same type of glyph in Phoenician, which is P. Water, chaos, I believe that is what that says. Mem, pronounced m, as in mother, which is appropriate. And then mu. In Greek, it's mu. Okay, and you can see even the lowercase, it still has that sort of water shape to it. So let me go ahead and draw this out. This is exactly where this comes from. So this shape right here, our capital letter M, I will say, okay, was this shape. If you were to draw the top of a water or the top of the ocean, and you would draw out little waves, kind of like this is where this comes from. Okay, so that's why it means water. So what this is it was like water, the top of water. This is how water was drawn. This is still how people draw water, okay? And then sometimes it actually meant originally to come up out of the waters, actually. So chaos is born out of the waters. So they would draw a line way down beneath the waters and they would make it go up. So to come up out of the waters, which is why sometimes this glyph is drawn like this. The water top, this is the top of the ocean or whatever, and then they would draw a line down like that. What this actually was something coming up out of the water, which is like, for example, in the Bible, the name Moses or Moshe means to be drawn out of the water, and it starts with the letter M or mem, right? So after a while, they just sort of like cut off this bottom part right here and just stuck with this portion of it over time, and that turned into M, and it meant especially life out of the waters, to come up out of the water, as in to be born, which is why mother or mom, etc., mem, all of that. Mom is basically mem, right? That vowel in the middle is just a forced vowel, but it means something that life that comes up out of the waters, right? The waters are chaotic, and then life comes up out of the waters and emerges. So that's what that means. The letter M or mem right over here next to me looks like a squiggly line if you carve it out into rock, or like a curved sort of line, because it represents the top of the ocean waters, basically. And specifically, it would be like moving waters, not stagnant waters. Otherwise, it would be like death, because things that come out of stagnant water are things that are dead. Okay, like that's not good. You want your waters to be moving so that you can have whatever comes up out of them to be alive, basically, if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next one. Let me have a little sip here. Thanks all. It's good to see all you other night owls. Wow, I might have to hang out in the chat for a bit. I don't know. Anyways, let's go on to the next one. So LMNOP, you know the whole deal, right? MN. So here's N. This one's really interesting. It's nun. So this one is mem. This one is nun. Or the way that we would write that in English is like this. None. Which is very interesting. This is a really enigmatic, mysterious word, right? None. Or it's actually noon, because of the pronunciation of the vav originally was u, right? So noon, like high noon, right? Or like the nun, like a Catholic nun, same deal. This letter, Nun, originally had a little circle and then like a squiggly tail that came off of it. Okay, so the portion they took was the end of the squiggly tail, and that turned into the letter N right there. But what it was it was a picture of, some people would call this like, the seed of a man, I'm going to say, without being too graphic. But I will tell you what I see it as. I see this as a ball of plasma. So this is plasma, or ball lightning, basically, and it leaves a trail coming off of it, right? I know, there's reasons why it looks like other things too, because it's all fractal, and everything grows out of those types of spiritual, invisible qualities, or light, basically. So that's why it looks like that. And this symbol means life. It actually means life. And it is the symbol for life, basically. Let's take a look at some comparisons here. So here we have, what is it? Mem is the water top, M, right? And then here it looks like a snake. This is very much what it looks like in the Egyptian hieroglyphs as well. It looks just like a snake or whatever, because it's plasma. In my opinion, this is how I interpret that, is it is a squiggly line of plasma, which is life, basically, or moving spirit, which moves through the air like that. And then as you can see, it's sort of drawn like that. It's very similar to the mem, how they drew the mem, the life coming out of the water, which is directly related to this, which is the life, or the beam of light that comes up out of the surrounding waters, which are these crystal clear waters in this lake at the center of the world. But this is the mem, the Nun, the letter Nun, and then as you can see, it turned into this glyph right here. Let's check out some examples. What does this say? Sprout. So this is like a sprout, or this would be like the root, and then like the head of a plant, or the bulb of a plant. It's hard for me to make out what that says. Continue? It's hard for me to read that. Here it is, Nun, and it's the same in the hieratic, or the Egyptian. Seed. Man, that's hard to read that. Life, seed, etc. Right? So you can see that it springs forth life. It brings forth this image right here brings forth life, basically, right? And it is the letter Nun. Now, this letter, the letter N, or the letter Nun, is equal to, boom, boom, the number 50. Very interesting stuff. So if you, for example, if you read in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there was a character who was a type of Jesus, or a foreshadowing of Jesus in the Bible. His name was Joshua, which is pretty much the same name as Jesus. It's just pronounced differently. And Joshua was called the son of Nun, or the son of none. Not the son of none, as in nobody, which is funny, but the son of none, or the son of 50. The 50, if you study like the ancient Sumerian, Babylonian, the Anunnaki, etc., those types of gods, or those ancient, what people called gods, they were represented by numbers, right? And their numbers, like if I were to draw one of the Anunnaki, let me just try to draw one here. So we got like a face, right? Anunnaki head. And then they all wore hats. Okay, so they had these sort of hats that were sort of Smurf looking Phrygian caps or whatever, right? And then these caps had horns on each side. So if they had a pair of horns like that, that would represent the number 10. Okay, so this would represent like a low-class Anunnaki. And the more horns that they grew, or the more horns that they had on their hat, this would represent 20. This would represent 30, right? And it went all the way up to, basically, if you had 5 of these rows of horns, you were a very, very high god. And I think that represented Enlil, I believe. Or Enki, I can't remember which one. I want to say Enlil. 60, one higher, which was the highest one, represented the sky god Anu, or On, etc. But so you could tell who Joshua was by basically he was the son of somebody who had a hat that had 50 or 5 rows of horns, which is very interesting. That gets into a whole nother teaching, so I don't want to get too far off topic, but I just think that that's interesting, that the letter Nun is directly related to the number 50, the son of Nun, the son of Nun, etc. All right, let's move on to the next letter. The next letter we've got here is Mem, here is Nun, here is Samek. Now, Samek is very interesting. Let's check out Samek. All right, so up here we've got Mem, Nun, Samek. Now, take a look at Samek. Just it looks like a column that has these lines that come out of it, like a triple T or a triple cross or something like that, right? Let's check out Samek down here. It says, what does that say? It's hard to read. Them, grab, hate, protect. Okay, I like that. It's not bad. And where is Samek down here? Ah, here we go. Samek. Now you see how it's got like an H sound? That's because they're trying to force you to pronounce it in a different, and it's that guttural. Samek. Samek. That's why they have that right there. And it says a hand on staff, support, prop. I like this one the best so far. This support and the prop. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna go with basically in my explanation of Samek. So Samek is drawn basically like this, and then it's got like chapow, chapow, like that, right? So basically, what you have here is remember how we were talking about Mount Meru in the middle of the world, and it shoots up that beam, right? And that beam has little eddies that come off of it, right? It creates like this little electrical. I forgot what that's called, but they're like instabilities that come off of the beam, basically. So it's a type of column, and it's a type of pillar, an electrical pillar. This is very much like the Jed in Egyptian, right? The Jed is like a 3D version of this, basically. If I was to try to draw the Jed, it would be like, oops, hold on, where's my pen? So Samek means support, basically. And it's very much like a type of Jed pillar. And the Jed sort of had like these little antennas. And this is exactly what it looks like if you go out and you look at the roads and you drive next to the roads, you see electricity and power lines. And, you know, usually they have like little lines coming off of here. That's what the Jed pillar basically is a type of that, a forerunner of that. It's not exactly what it is because it's more spiritual than that. But that's what it means. It means support. It means it's a pillar that has these instabilities coming off of it, and it means power, it means support, it means strength, it means something that is supportive. This is what you would also erect physically. If this was made out of wood, you would hang plants or allow vines to like grow on this, or you know, you could put plants on this and stuff like that, and it was a support pillar. Which could also be seen as like the cross that Moses put up in the desert with the bronze snake on it or whatever, however you want to draw that. But basically Samek means support, and that's why it's turned into the letter S, basically, right? So we got like the support pillar, little beams or whatever, and then you could see, and also boom, money sign too. Anyways, basically it sort of means support. Okay, so that's kind of what Samek implies. Let's move on to the next one. So we've got Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin. Ayin is how this one is pronounced. Let's check out Ayin. If we go up here to the top, we can see Mem, Lamed, Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin. Looks like an I. Exactly how it's pronounced, basically. Ayin. On, basically. That last part is different. But I, it means an eye. So let's check it out. Originally it was drawn as an eye. This one is there's not a lot of guessing when it comes to this glyph or interpretation. It is an eye. Ayin was originally one eyeball, and it meant an eye, or by extension, to watch, to know things, because you take things into your eyes to learn, etc. Ayin, here it is again. It means an eye, it means to see, it means to experience things in the world, etc., right? And that is the letter Ayin. They say it's a silent letter, so, you know, it's sort of like an ancient vowel form, not something that was put in there to force a pronunciation, but many of these older like vowel forms, I'll call it a vowel form because originally there were no vowels. Vowels are there to force a pronunciation, right? But we did have vowel sounds like ah and oo and stuff like that. Those are vowel forms, but they're not vowels as in like the modern vowels, right? So anyways, ayin, the picture of the eye. And it means to see, to know, etc. And originally it was like an oval type shape with a dot in the middle. This is also, if we draw the circular, the sun glyph, right? With a dot in the middle. This is the glyph for the sun. The all-seeing eye is that depressurization point up there in the sky. If you were directly underneath that depressurization point in the dome, as I mentioned earlier, you would see a perfect circle, just like this. And then you would see a smaller circle inside of that, because that's an upside. I'm drawing a two-dimensional version of it. Keep that in mind. If you're directly underneath it looking straight up. So you would see this outer circle is that inverted dome or the door or the dalet, right? This is the opening when it does open, actually, which would be a dot. And then this would give rise to this new light source whenever we go through our next polarity reversal or shift in the world, and you have all those beams of light shooting up as columns touching the sky, and then you have one light source in the middle, which is all red and ionized hydrogen and stuff, which is that inverted inner dome glowing red, and then the central part is like extremely red. It's the red spectrum because it's ionized hydrogen. But anyways, and then people would interpret that as being the sun, and that is a different type of light source. It's not a point of focus like we have today. We have a totally different sun in this day and age than we used to. But anyways, if you were to not be directly underneath it, like as in this example, but you were way further south, then this circle would turn more oval in shape, and it would look more like this, or like a traditional eye type of a shape, like a sort of almond type of a shape to it with the dot in the middle, right? So that is the eye, and it means to see, to watch, to know, etc. So those who come from the eye were also known as the watchers, etc., right? So that is ayin. Let's go back to this. All right, recap. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe. Pay is next. Pay like you pay somebody, you could say. That's not what it means, but it's a mouth. That's all it is. It's an open mouth. Like, it'd be nice if they drew some teeth or something so you know it's a mouth. It's hard to tell exactly what that is. Let's look at some comparisons. 1 second. Oh yeah, we could just block that dude. Let's see. Hide user on this channel. All right. Bye. See you later, troll. Some people are so stupid. Bro, if you want to talk about cults, I will explain what a cult is to you. Just because people are like-minded and they all, research things that are contrary to popular opinion or academics or whatever, I'll go deep onto what a cult actually is and give you strong examples of real cult leaders and actual cults and stuff like that. This is me teaching some stuff on the side, which is esoteric ancient knowledge, which can be accessed at any library or school system or whatever. If there's anything that I've said in here that's a lie, feel free to let me know. But don't come in my chat jumping around saying, oh, this is a cult because I'm unfamiliar with all this. You know what I mean? Like, that's retarded. Okay. If you mean cult as in culture, as in, like this is a culture or a group, yes, totally. A group of people that are like-minded, similar, investigating the same types of things, but don't turn it into something disgusting and bad. Okay. Because there are lots of cults, like bad ones, in the world today, and there's lots that are emerging and rising and stuff. Don't compare me and those people that follow my channel to something so disgusting and toxic as that, because that's not, you're in the wrong spot, buddy. All right, that was just some lame in the chat. So let me jump back to the presentation. All right, so we've got, what letter are we on? Samek, Ayin, Pe, the mouth. Let's go. Speaking of mouths. All right, so the mouth. Let's go over to Pe. So as you can see, it's sort of like an open mouth. Like if the mouth is open and stretched out, not like like an open mouth, but like a wide open mouth like that. And it means, or conveys blow, scattering, the edge, Let's look at another version of it. So here's ayin. And you could see the difference between ayin and pe is because the ayin has an iris right there in the middle, and pe, which means mouth, word, or speak. So oftentimes the letter pe as a mouth also conveys something that comes out of an opening, right? Or words, basically, or to speak, etc. All right, thank you for all your support in the chat. I appreciate you guys. Seriously, I'm probably going to do a video on actual cults one of these days. So it's just like, it's so lame to me that people just come in trying to be trolls and get some attention or whatever. Like, just, it's so easy to be dismissive instead of intellectual. It's so easy to just cast insults instead of being reasonable and having conversation. You know what I mean? To me, that's a sign of a lame. Like, I just call those people lames. They're so lame. All right, anyways, their parents are probably lame. Like, their whole background's probably full of lame people. Anyways, back to the teaching. All right, pe. It's pronounced P. Also, this one's really interesting. So this is where we get P and that F sound too, right? Lord Racer, what's up, Lord Racer? High five. Been in the Good Vibe Tribe for 4 months and says best live chat on YouTube. I totally agree. All right, so let me go back to this. So this is P, basically, is sort of like the stretched out oval, and that's a mouth. If you drew a line down the middle, it's exactly how people draw lips, you know, or how a child would draw lips, basically. But this means, this is pe. P, I'm going to say E-Y. Okay, there's probably different variants of ways you could spell that or whatever. But this P sound, by some cultures, was pronounced as pre. Pre. It was like a P and a guttural at the same time, so they would put an H in there, or that guttural sound. And this is why we have words like phone, which start with P, but make an F sound with that H right next to it, because they're trying to force you to pronounce it in the way that the original people did. And this is also why the word phone and phonetics and phonics and all those types of things, phoenix, this is why they start with this particular group of letters, which is really strange. It starts with a P, but it's pronounced as an F. And that's why it's related to the mouth, or something that comes out of an opening. Just like this would be the top of the plasma volcano of Mount Meru, or Rupus Nigra. This is the mouth of the world, where the zephyr, you know, comes up out, or the breath of God comes out, etc. And that is the letter P, which means a mouth. Pretty cool, right? All right, so let's jump into the next one. We've got, Zadeh, or Zadi. This one's an interesting one. This one's kind of mysterious, so let's check it out. Mem nun samek ayin pe Zadeh, or Zadi. There's different ways to pronounce this based on different dialects and accents, okay? So let's check out some comparisons. Let's see. This is supposed to be the pe, so this is Zadi. See how it looks like a sort of a sprout or a plant or something up there at the top? Now look at these ones. These are more similar. These ones have more in common, where it's like a long straight line and then a squiggly line off to the side. Now this letter, Zadi, is pronounced just like the double Z in pizza. So you know how in pizza you sort of say like Pete. I'm just writing it phonetically, but pizza, right? Pizza. That's sort of how we pronounce that. This T and the Z right next to each other, z, or if you want to include the A, za, right? This is exactly how that letter, Zadeh or Zadi, is pronounced. And it was drawn, let me show you how it was drawn. There's different ways to draw this, but usually people would draw a long line and then like a squiggly line coming off the side, or they would draw a long line and like a little line coming off, and it actually looks like it makes a T and a Z. That's how you can remember that, is it makes a za, like there's little tassels that Jewish people wear on the side of their prayer shawls, and they tie knots in them, and those are called tzitzits, and that starts with this particular letter. It's TZ, z, or the tzitzit fly. You know the tzitzit fly? Same exact pronunciation. T and then Z. Z, or Zadeh. That's how you pronounce that one, that particular letter. And basically this, let's take a look at what they say. If we look up Zadeh, here you can see the oldest form of it. Let me take this off. So aside from these hieroglyphic angular drawings of it. They would draw like a picture of a person's head. Let me make sure I get this correct here. No, let me go older than that. We're going to go back, way back. Okay, down, up, down. All right, so then they would draw a person's head, their back, and then their knees going up and their leg going down. So what this was supposed to be, if I was to add like the arms, right? This is like a person lying down. Okay, so that's what that's supposed to be originally, and it meant side, which is kind of how the letter is pronounced. Sade. Sade, or T-Z-A-D-E, meant side, essentially. Or it conveyed things like to be on the side of, which is why originally the glyph had a long line and then another line coming off the side. Like this is the main path right here, and this is a side path right here. Does it make sense, right? So this letter conveyed to be on the side, or by extension to be crouched down low, or to be lying down, and things like that. All right, cool. So that's Zadeh. Let me go ahead and move on to the next one here. So let's see. We got Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe, mouth, Ayin, Pe, Zadeh, or Tzadi, which is side. And then Kof. Now, Kof is cool. I really like Kof. Let's jump into Kof. Let me show you some comparisons. Now, up here, you can see it sort of looks like a snowman or the number 8 right here. But then this gets more into the traditional drawings of it, which is a circle with a line that sort of splits that circle, which turned into our modern letter Q. Where did it go? Where's the Q? So here's the Q right here, right? So you can see how they drew this connection from the Kof, which is right up here, right? It goes down and then it scooches over because they kept on adding more and more letters in the alphabets. But this turned into Q. And this is where the Q symbolism comes from the Q in the Star Trek series, right? So this is the letter Q, from Q-Bert to Q in the Star Trek to Q in online, communities, whatever, QAnon and all that stuff. This is the Q symbolism. So I'm going to explain to you what this originally was, right? So first, let's check out what they say. As you can see here, this was the original glyph for it. This one right here with this little circle and a big line going all the way through it. So originally it was a circle like this with a line that was very long going all the way through it. This was the original letter Q. So let's go back. And then you can see it sort of went upside down and stuff like that too. And it says sun, or like the sun above us at the horizon. I disagree with that. I mean, I'm not saying that that's wrong, okay? Because it could be interpreted as this is the sun on the horizon. However, if it was really the sun on the horizon, I would assume it would be like this, like an inverted dalet, because that is the sun at the horizon. Because the horizon is solid down here, you wouldn't see it through the horizon. So I don't think that the people would have drawn the sun like that if it was meant to mean like sunrise or sunset. However, I could see that people would assume that because it kind of looks similar to it, right? So I'm just going to give you my interpretation of it. Kof, here it is down here. You can see it's the same in Phoenician. And it says the sun at the horizon, or behind. Let's see what else we got. Kof, K as in king. So it's a hard K sound. Ko, ko. Not qua, or any of that stuff, but ko, 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 ko. Like a hard back of the throat, not guttural, but ko. Like a K, basically. All right, and then that would be what would the equivalent be? Oh, it looks like maybe phi is probably the equivalent. All right, in Greek. All right, let's get back to this one. Where's the Kof? Here it is. So you can see it kind of looks like Saturn, basically. Like if this was a planet, it would be Saturn, okay? And there's a good reason for that, right? So this also means this symbol meant like an opening. And I believe this is a picture basically of like a cave or something, and it's a split. Basically this means to split. Okay, so that's why you have like a circle or an object or whatever, and it's split in half. Or the division sign is like a you know, another version of like the kof or whatever like that, but it means to split. It means to divide. And actually, originally, I believe it meant an opening, right? I meant, this is directly related to an Egyptian glyph that meant a female body part, okay? Like, you know, the body part that makes babies, basically, right? It was an opening and a line like that, and it meant a split. It meant an opening in something, and it's directly related to words like cave or kav or kolf, etc. Like cave is basically the same word as kolf. Cough, when you cough, you open your mouth, right? You have an opening. Cough or kolf, how do you spell that? I guess we'll spell it with a Q. It would be something like this if we were to write it out. Q-O-F, which F really is V. Remember that, right? So this is basically equates to this exact same word. So it means an opening, right? Something that's split open. Something that is split open. Red Starring. What's up, Red Starring? Good to see you. All right, cool. So that is Kolf. That is the Q. All right, so let's move on to the next one. The next one, here we have Zadeh, Kolf, Resh. Now, this is probably the easiest one out of all of them. This Resh and Aleph are the two easiest ones to guess what they are. Aleph looks just like the head of an ox. Resh looks just like the head of a man or a woman, a person, a human, right? So Resh, if we look it up originally, it is equivalent to, you can see it was a profile of a human's head, right? And then after a while, they just drew like the neck and then like the top of the head. And then it just looks like that, which also is similar to like a couple of other letters we've already covered. Oh, I'm sorry. No, the resh right here actually follows down this way. It looks like a backwards D. And that turned into the letter R. Resh. I say it with more of a rolling of the tongue, but it's a R sound. R, ra, 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 ra. Right? Where your tongue doesn't actually touch, it's a ra, resh, resh. All right, so the resh, if we go back, was a picture of a person's head or the profile of a person's head. Here's their neck, here's their face or whatever, boom. And then this was the person's head. They would draw an eye or whatever, and this was resh. So over time, this turned into a neck and a head. And then, boom, R, basically. I don't know. But it turned into the letter R. Okay, so Resh is pronounced R-A-Y-S-H, Resh, Resh, and it means head. Or you could also say Rosh, right? It's like because of the vowels. Vowels are pronounced in different ways. Rosh means head, and by extension, the top of something. Rosh. Right? So this is the root for words like Rosh Ya, which is just Enki or Yahweh or whatever you want to say. But Rosh, or land of, I guess you could say, the land at the top is Russia. And that's what that implies. Rush or Rosh meant the head, the top, the head of a man, the first thing, right? The top thing, the primary thing, the primero, the top, the beginning, primero. The head of a person, the top, the beginning, the top, etc. R, it's a hard R sound as in royal. The people that came from this area and basically rule the world. And that's what it means. It's pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. It means the top. It means the head, right? And by extension, the most important part of the body, the most important thing, the first things, etc., right? And that's R or Resh. All right, so Kof, Resh, Shin. Shin. So just like your shin, which is between your knee and your ankle, that's kind of how that's pronounced. Shin is the next letter, or Charlie Sheen, you could say. Let me scooch this over a bit. All right, so up here, it kind of looks like a W, basically. If we were to, try to equate that to our modern alphabet, it kind of looks like a W, but it's not. Originally, it was a picture of something, right? So if we follow that, it comes down here, all the way down here, and it turns into the letter S. So let's check it out. Here's some examples. And it means two front teeth. So these are like buck teeth, basically, like the very front two teeth, just like that, right? And then jagged, when they're carving it as a hieroglyph, looks like a W, or pointy teeth, or like vampire teeth or something like that, right? Let's see some more examples. Sheen, over here, it's very carved out. It's hard to make like rounded teeth when you're carving and stuff like that. So it would look like this, basically, like buck teeth or horse teeth or something. And it means to eat, to consume, by extension, to destroy. Okay, so this sort of is, the letter sheen is typical of having a negative connotation because of what it implies, which is the teeth are there to crush, to destroy, to break down things, right? And that's what it means, basically, or that's what it implies. And this one is more of a sh sound. It could be pronounced S, but that's more samek. Remember that one samek that looks like the power grid or the power line, right, that we talked about, or the Jed pillar? That one's more of a S. This one originally, I believe, was more of a sh, as is evident in the name Sheen, right? So some people pronounce it S, some people pronounce it SH. It's all a matter of dialect and accent and stuff like that. But it is a picture of teeth in the mouth. So let's go ahead and draw that out. If we were to draw it, boom, 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 boom. So here we would have a pei. We would draw a pei, which means mouth, right? Some people would say fei, like Tina Fey, same exact word, basically. And then you would draw the teeth, or you would draw the sheen. Boom, which is basically a W right in the front. And that's why in modern Hebrew, that's why it looks very much like a W, okay? So you would have like, and then they have like these little squigglies on the top, and it kind of looks like a fancy W, but it's just a fancy calligraphy tooth, or a set of teeth, basically. And it means everything that your teeth imply: to bite, to gnaw, to latch on to something, to eat, to consume, to take in, etc., right? Sort of, yeah. So that's, I don't want to get, too much into it, but that's basically what it means. It means teeth. And like, as you can see here, this one's drawn sort of squiggly. This one's more squiggly, like a molar or something like that, like your back tooth, right? So it doesn't really matter if it's pointy or if it's squiggly, it still means tooth. Now we come to the last one. This one is the first one, or the alpha. This one is the last one, or the omega, which would be in Greek. Omega. Now, omega is basically looks like the teeth that we just went over. However, in Hebrew, it is tav. It is just a cross, a cruciform, an X standing up. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples here. If we go all the way back, you can see it's a cross, it's a cruciform. It's the exact same as the tet, but without the circle around it. And you can see it's boom right there. It marks the spot, right? X marks the spot, which is appropriate. So let's check it out. Down here, I'm probably gonna have to scooch this up a bit. There we go. So it says here tav. So you can see it says crossed sticks, like a crucifix, a mark, a sign, a monument, something that represents anything, basically, a marker. If we go over here, it's the same in Phoenician and Hieratic, or script form of Egyptian. It says tav, mark, sign, covenant, also promise, right? T as in time. This is the T sound, the hard T sound, and it was a marker. So it is basically a plus sign, just like this. It is, if it was the tet, it would be like that, right? But without that circle, it means a marker. And it is, you can make it as an X. This is where the letter X basically came from. And this is why people sign their name or put their mark. You know how they say like sign on the dotted line? They'll have an X right here. They didn't used to put an X right there. That was to tell people this is where you make your mark. That's why they put an X right there. And then you would like sign your name. You know what I mean? Or I don't know. That's my signature, but whatever. So it meant a marker. So whenever people signed their name, the people that didn't spell, the people that couldn't spell, they would just put a mark. They would put, I mark this, you know what I mean? So they would say, leave a mark right here. And they would put an actual marker or an X, or the Tav. Now this is spelled Tav. Hold on. Let's go back. This is spelled Tav, T-A-V, traditionally. But remember, this V right here is really a Vav, which is U. So it's really T-A-U. Right? Tau. The Tau. This is very interesting stuff. So the Tau is a marker, or a plus sign, you could say, to add, or an X. And this also is mentioned and referenced in the Bible too, where they talk about how people would receive a mark. There were two types of marks, not just in the book of Revelation, where they talked about an evil mark from the beast, which most people assume is like a 666 tattoo on your forehead or whatever, but it was not. It was an actual marker, which was the Tau, or the Tav. But the people of God earlier in the Bible also they received a mark on their forehead, right between their eyes. I don't want to get too biblical into it, because I have different translations, or I have different ways of interpreting those events and those markers and stuff like that, because I personally believe that it has to do with good energy and bad energy, good works and bad works, etc. But all you need to take away from all of that is that this plus sign down there is the Tav, or the Tau, right? And it is the X that marks the spot. I mean, technically the Tet is the X that marks the spot, right? Or you could have like basically it's the four rivers in the Garden of Eden. Okay. And right in the middle is the plasma volcano. Right in the middle is, where life comes out of. And this is why they put X's on maps and stuff as markers for buried treasure and stuff like that. And that is the Tav, or the Tau, you could say. And that is our presentation of Phoenician. Let's go ahead and recap. We've got Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mim, or Mim, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pe, Tzadeh, Kof, Resh, Shin, Tav. And those are the 22 original letters of, at the very least, the Phoenician, some people would say Paleo-Hebrew, alphabet, or Aleph Bet. How was it? How was the presentation? I hope you guys can take away a lot and learn some stuff. I'm very visual, and I feel like it's fun, especially with letters, to learn visually, to learn what they represent and what their origins are. Underbear says, great presentation tonight. Thank you. Oh, it's 11:11, or it was 11:11, where Lady Luke's lives. Over here, it's a different time, obviously. The Alpha Beta. All right, cool. Does anybody have any questions? Does anyone have any comments or questions? I'll go ahead and I'll get the chat pulled up for just a second. I mean, it's already a long presentation, so why not? Let me go ahead and get the chat so I can put your comments on the screen. All right, cool. Oh, Anthrax Access just gifted 5 more memberships. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And then we also have Pseudo. What's up, Pseudo? Says JayDreamerZ. Phenomenal. What's your work email again? I don't have a work email. I have a business email. So it's way different. I don't want people to become confused and think that they could just personally send me emails, because some people have done that. And it's sad, because I just put them in my spam, and then that means that I can never get emails from them ever again. It's kind of like blocking them. But if you have a business that you'd like to talk to me about, I do have that listed in the community section on my channel. So for example, if you want to work together on something business-wise, or you want me to make an appearance or something like that, that's more of a business type of a thing where you can reach out to me. Also, I have a PO box, and the PO box is listed right up there on that scroller. You can also write to me there. We got Little Bluebird, who says, thank you. Awesome presentation. You're welcome. Awesome picture. I like it. Linda, what's up, Linda? Is doing the woke thing. Good to see you, Linda. BB, good to see you, BB. It's okay if you missed it. You could just rewind it. Diggs says, good stuff. Thank you. Not really here. Good to see you. Yes. So if you have a business inquiry, or you want to talk to me about collaborations, or, things like that, basically work stuff, then yeah, you could totally send me an email. Lady Luke's, is this the basis of phonics? Yes, I believe it is. I believe this is where, that's a good question. Where does the word phonics come from, right? It comes from Phoenicians, or the people who came from the Phoenix. And the Phoenix was, the Phoenix is what comes out of Mount Meru. So if you have like Rupus Nigra, the high and lofty tower or whatever, right? Let me take this down. And then you have this beam of energy that shoots up and then it spreads its wings like that, right? Or the Vav in the sky, like we talked about, or Jesus hanging on the cross, or Odin, or whatever, right? Eventually, this is actually going to turn into aurora, and it's going to turn into like feathers, basically, or it's going to look like feathers, right? As it's no longer a beam, but it mixes with the fluid, which we call atmosphere, and this becomes the Thunderbird. Let me put the depressurization point in there. This is the Thunderbird, this is the Phoenix, and then you would have plasma leaking out in whatever direction the wind is blowing, which would be a beak. And this is the Phoenix, this is the Thunderbird, and this is why the people who come from this area are called Phoenicians. They come from the land of the Phoenix, or the land of the fire that comes out of the mountain. Excuse me. All right, let's see. Oh, Anthrax Axis says, great show. Definitely downloading this one. I work out of service a lot. Many thanks. You're very welcome, Anthrax. Thank you so much for always being around and being a good part of the chat. It's me, Ms. V says, the alphabet reminded me of counting to 10 in Armenian. Interesting. They sound similar. Fun fact, Anush in Armenian means honey/loved one. Interesting. That's cool. Who else we got? We got I'm trying to catch up. How do you write JayDreamerZ in Phoenician? I'd have to take a little second to think of that. So off the top of my head, I don't know. I can figure it out though. So could you, honestly. Underbear says, looks like a dragon face in Kung Fu movies. Interesting. Draco2 says, JayDreamerZ, please do a truth in movies for Strange World. I have thought about doing that one. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's got a lot of really good truth, but there's parts in there that just are unnerving to me. Like I don't like all the agenda stuff that they try to put in there and stuff. But that is a good one, and I really do like the fractal verse portion that they basically talk about and show, and they do a lot of Garden of Eden symbolism and stuff like that too. That is a good one. I don't know. I'll keep it in mind. I just don't like how obtuse they can be, like in a lot of movies, not just that one. Let's see who else we got in the chat. Anything? We got Mr. E who says, are you aware that Aleph and Tav are the Mercury symbol? Interesting. What else we got? Glad I found your channel. Iron Horse, what's up? Welcome, Iron Horse. Good to see you. Glad I found your channel today, bro. Very interesting information here and great people. I agree too. I like both of those. Good information and great company, right? Good company. Do I know the Ogham language? I have come across it, but I don't know it. I would have to research it again. Let me check it out. I have a second. Ogham. Ogham is basically what that is Ogham. Or a ham is like a short for a hamlet or a city or a little village. The village of Og. And Og is basically akin to Atlas. Ogham language. Or alphabet, I should say. And then we'll pull up some pictures. Let me check it out. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see. It looks like code. It reminds me of the really lame secret code of the Masons. That was like the first secret code I ever figured out without anybody helping me. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. I like that. That's pretty cool. Thanks for showing me that. All right, cool. Let me jump back in the chat. Draco says, just skip the agenda parts, but the turtle and the dome and the underworld and a lot of truth in movies is mind-blowing. Yeah, I totally agree. It's a pretty good flick. I'll keep that in mind. All right, let's see. My chat's really huge. Sorry if I skip anybody. I'm just trying to go through. I think that's about it. So, oh, wait a minute. I got BB has a question. Do you think the phoenix was a real bird in the past time? No, I don't. Good question. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that I believe that it's a cartoonification of a reality, right? Something that has been turned into a cartoon form of what people saw physically in their actual experience. I don't think that there's animals that can set themselves on fire and then be reborn from their own fire. I mean, not in that way, maybe in the way that their DNA is still contained in the ashes. And, you know, if you get really technical and detailed, I believe anything is possible. But an actual physical, you know, reddish orange bird with really long feathers that spontaneously combusts and then turns into, you know, and then is born out of its ashes. Not actually. No, I don't. I like it. I love it. It's one of my favorite, you know, legendary creatures or whatever. And I like the symbolism of it. However, I do see the symbolism of what it represents. Good question. And I do believe there are mythic and legendary animals that did exist, like the unicorn and stuff like that. I do believe there's physical, actual representations of those in our history that we've forgotten about. And, you know, maybe there's a type out there that I haven't come across yet that's like a phoenix type. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but for the most part, I see the symbolism in the phoenix. All right, anybody else? Let's see. Oh, this Sunday is going to be, the truth in movies for this Sunday is going to be Men in Black, which I'll be working on all day tomorrow. Oh, Ken Ray Albert gave me a super chat and says, any thoughts on why there are connections between North America and elsewhere in the language, and the migration nations flag is the Templar battle flag in reverse? Ooh, I got a little lost towards the end of that question. Any thoughts on why there are connections between North America and elsewhere? Let me pause there and answer that. So, I'm pretty sure you probably have seen the Tartaria video that I did, right? So if you check out that Tartaria video, I talked about how there were these nations that came out of this region right here, like we talked about, and we do reference, right? And how they spread out across the world. So there you're going to find many correlations, or if not infinite correlations, between the languages, between all of these different locations, and how they branch out the further south they get. It's not, this is separated from this. The closer north, the more unified we see races, colors, languages, stuff like that. But the further south, or the further outward we get, if you look at the world as a plane of existence, the further out we get, there's the more division, right? So the closer to the north, even if it's in a circle and it's like Russia over here and America over here or whatever, the more similarities we're going to see, especially within like tribal cultures, islander cultures and things like that. And then elsewhere in the language and the migration nation's flag is the Templar battle flag in reverse. I'm not sure. Let me look up Templar battle flag. I don't know what that is. Oh, this one? Is that what you're talking about? So this is used all over the place. This is, you know, a cross in some places. This is the Tav. This is just, all this is where to go. This right here. Okay. So all these nations, all these royalty and nobles and all that garbage. Okay. I mean, it's sort of garbage. It depends on your perspective. Okay. One day I plan on being a type of noble and royal and stuff like that, not through any, you know, choice of my own or anything, but just by default, by being a survivor of the apocalypse. But anyways, this is where it all harkens back to. They're all, whether they know it or not, or whether it has been forgotten or not, Ken, is it harkens back to this land. They're all referencing the cross. They're all referencing the land where they originally came from, or where their ancestors came from, because they are the Elu, not the El, right? So this, all of those crosses and stuff on flags, you know, all that type of stuff, they're not different countries. They're just different tribes that grew out, you know, they're all family basically. And it all references this spot where they came from, or where their ancestors came from. All right. Good question, Ken. Let's see. I think that's about it. I'm not really going to take any more. Mi'kmaq First Nation flag. I don't know what that is. All right, last one. Mi'kmaq flag. Oh yeah, same type of deal. Hold on, let me check this out. I don't even know what this is. Oh, is it Canadian? Is that what that is? Mi'kmaq. This is interesting. I love checking out the symbolism in flags and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to dismiss it or anything. I'm getting tired now. That's all. But anyways, this is very interesting, especially when they have that crescent moon symbol, and especially when it's upside down like that. That's super interesting. To me, that's the Dalet. That's the inverted dome that we talk about, or the real moon, same exact thing, right? So that's interesting stuff. Right on, cool. I'm gonna have to look into that a little more next time. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. This has been a long presentation, but a good one. I'm sorry that I'm running out of energy. I did stop drinking coffees because I'm talking so much. And I'm not sorry, you know, I'm not really sorry. But I had fun. I felt like this was packed, filled, chock full of energy. I mean, not energy, maybe not so much energy, but teachings, right? This was a good one. This is the type of presentations that I used to do a long time ago, before it was all about just pictures and videos and stuff like that. An actual presentation, an actual teaching on things that hopefully you can use, that are relevant and interesting and help to make some sense out of a chaotic world. All right. Well, I'm going to go. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Cool.